Welcome to the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners, meeting Thursday, January 28, 2021. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for playback on demand within 24 hours of this event at wrpsrockland.com. Thank you. Hi, Michael. Let me take a moment to introduce everyone. Get here.
Oh, boy.
Right straight ahead of you here is Sewer Commissioner Chuck Hession.
Chuck? Yep.
To your right is Stacy Callahan,
Hi.
Human Resource Director. You have been in contact throughout this process, I guess. To my left, Dave Taylor, Highway Superintendent for the town of Rockland, and currently acting as interim sewer superintendent. Now, and we have Robin Day behind me, administrative assistant in the sewer department. Thank you for your interest in the town of Rockland. We appreciate you taking the time to apply the position of sewer superintendent. Now,
Thanks for having me.
I will turn this over to Stacy.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
How you doing tonight?
Great. Nice to meet you formally.
Nice to meet you finally as well. It's been a process here, but we're excited to have you and get to know a little bit more about your qualifications. I think we're just going to get right into it, if that's all right with you.
It is.
Great. Can you briefly tell us about yourself, your work history, and education, or any special training that you may have had to get you to the point in your career where you're applying for the sewer superintendent?
Sure. Michael Sullivan. I'm from Somerset, down the road a piece. I grew up there, but now my wife and I and our 3 kids, we live in Marshfield. So 13, 10, and 9, that's my world, or part of it anyhow. I've been in the sewer business for approaching 12 years now. Currently working at Weston and Sampson, all across the South Shore. Prior to that, I worked at Town of Situate for, I think, 6.5 years or so. I'd have to refresh my memory. Prior to that, I worked at what's called a septage receiving facility down in Taunton. So it took all septage from Title V homes and processed it there. That was my first wastewater gig, if you will. And prior to that, I was at Clean Harbors for a little while out of Braintree. But I got my degree from Bridgewater State College, now university. I did about 3.5 years there. Prior to that, I was at Bristol Community College in Fall River for my associates and transferred all that to get my bachelor's at Bridgewater. So, and here I am. I have a great job. I enjoy my job, but this is fascinating to me. Rather different from what I'm doing, but I'd like to learn more about it.
Excellent. Sounds great. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Could you tell us, in your municipal experience, how do you plan to utilize that experience here in Rockland as a sewer superintendent?
Situate is a small community, and you get a lot more population and commercial and sewer users here. But how I would use it is, I guess the communication is the best, is the best, is a start. You know, there's a lot of I don't know what the population is in Rockland, but it's, I'm not sure if I'm answering that properly, but.
That's okay. And we're about the same as Situate, got 17,000 people.
Yep. But a lot more commercial here and industrial. And there's a lot of industrial here too, I noticed. So, but, no 2 users are alike per se, and you gotta, you know, I'm imagining things are flowing well, no pun intended, but I'm sure there's gonna be issues to address, but those start with communication. Where the problem came from, what the problem is, and how to address it and amend it and correct it.
Okay. Are you familiar with the IPP, the NIPD's permit processing?
I am. National Pollution Discharge Elimination, the acronym, yeah.
How would you assure compliance with the different parameters as far as restaurants, commercial, and business?
Say it again, Chuck, I'm sorry.
How would you assure compliance to the NIPD's requirements in the IPP program with the restaurants and the business, commercial side? How do you do it now?
Well, I don't do it now with my current job. I mean, excuse me, I shouldn't say that. Everybody has a permit they have to meet. Well, look at their permit, what they're allowed, what the parameters are, and see if they're within permit. And if they're not, why? Or if they haven't, if they've, you know, come out of permit in the past, what happened? What did they do to correct that moving forward? And, you know, do you see the same, you know, let's say, restaurants, you know, too much BOD or, you know, consistent high BOD levels discharging into the system?
Do you have a method to backtrack that to a specific restaurant that you use or a specific business? Or do you just rely on your monthly discharge limits?
Well, you'd rely on that initially, but if there was, you could, there are ways to track where it's coming from, you know, do some composite testing of sorts, possibly at nearby, you know, the suspected, you know, violator, for lack of a better term.
David, you want to add anything to that? or-
No, he answered, I thought he answered it very well, because it's, all it is a tracking method that he'd have to have in place, which is set by the state anyway, so.
What's your experience and involvement with INI investigation and remediation?
There was INI at Situate, and we would, when I was there, we used the TV method, you know, the camera, to see what was going on in the suspected areas. And we did, I remember seeing, you know, cracked pipes and some, you know, from whatever reason. I remember one was a tree branch, a tree root had come in and led to an INI issue. And then door knocking. But I think you'd probably have with more population and more infrastructure, not infrastructure, but more users again, you'd have a lot more INI possibilities. And I know there's a lot of building, you know, there's some building going on in town, some more development that could lead to potential INI situations.
Do you feel you could write an SSES scope of work without the assistance of an outside contractor, not to physically do the work of the investigation, but to prepare a scope of work for a subcontractor to do?
To investigate for INI?
Yes.
I think I could do that, yes. Have I done that? No, I haven't, but I do believe I could undertake that, Chuck, yes.
What would you use as a measurement for the success of an INI program?
Do for the measurement?
Yeah, what would you use to say it's been successful or unsuccessful?
Well, as part of it, installing some flow meters, you know, around, again, the suspected violator or where we think the INI is coming from, the source, and see, you know, so start with a baseline of the flow in the area, and then look back to see, you know, when it went up, if you could, through, you know, flow charts or just, you know, the records with the sewer plant, and then, you know, have those flow meters installed in that area tentatively, and then if there's, you know, the corrections are made, or what, you know, hopefully the corrections are made, and you'll see that, you know, the flow will come down back to previous levels, if they're possible to find.
Please?
Sure. So the sewer superintendent position, in that department, there's really two, a sewer superintendent and the sewer administrative assistant. and then there's a plant that is run by Suez.
Yes.
So with that being said, in the job description, there is some dirty work or hands-on work, if you will, that will need to get done with this position. And a couple of those, that type of work would be grease trap inspections, you know, being called in late night if there's an accident and utility poles are affected, and you need to mark dig safe, general dig safe, or any late night or daily storage blockages. Is that something you're familiar with? Are you comfortable with it? I mean, it seems, you know, it's a managerial position, but there is some specific things that do have to get done, you know, outside of that sort of management aspect of the position.
When I was with Situate, I was on call on a rotating basis from, let me see, Monday to Sunday. You know, we'd rotate week by week. So I've had phone calls at literally every hour of the day for a sewer emergency. Maybe not a sewer emergency, but a pump failure, pump blockage, you know, what, you name it at the town of Situate, which I'm sure
Right.
Rockland has the same. So that's not a problem. I have dealt with grease traps, and I'm not afraid to get dirty. And I'll say, I've had a sludge bath, I've had sludge in my face, I've had, you know, I've deragged pumps, you know. Rags are an industry term, like when all the stuff congeals and, you know. So I've pulled pumps to derag them. I've been in wet wells. So I've gotten dirty. I've had, you know, my sense of smell is waning from the hydrogen sulfides. I still have my taste buds, though, which is a good thing. So all that you said, I will embrace, definitely.
Excellent. Great. And just to add on to that, what is your general knowledge in disconnecting from septic over to town sewer?
Well, if the town will take them on, you know, let's say, you know, so there's a fee involved, they got to tie in. Usually there's a stub that they would tie into. If there isn't, we'll create one for them at their expense. And so it's very doable. Does the homeowner want to pay for that? A lot of times they do, but no two situations alike. But yeah, I'm familiar with tying in
Great.
and welcoming a new user, new ratepayer. Yes, indeed.
Excellent. And then just to kind of wrap up some of the basics, are you familiar with the paperwork piece of it, like liens, waivers on the sewer and sewer service blockages? Are you familiar with those?
A lien, like.
The sewer lien?
Yeah, somewhat. What do you mean with the sewer blockages? What,
A sewer service blockage.
like if somebody gets shut off for not paying their bill? Is that what you mean?
Well, I think Stacy's trying to get the point, if there's a sewer blockage, like say, for example, we have a sewer blockage at one of our residents.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then they called like Roto-Rooter or another company.
Yep,
They came out and you found, we have a specific amount of money in the budget for that, and they found out that that it wasn't actually all on the town. It was like a split, maybe there was rags in there. We're seeing a lot of the wipes now with everything going on.
Matchbox cars.
Would you be willing to, you'd have to, try to work something out with the resident? Maybe it's a mutual thing. I think, that, she's looking for something, would there be a waiver there? And then I think she's referring to also liens if there's, we also work with the water department, and a lot of times, if there's somebody's not paying a bill.
Yes.
There's a lien, maybe it was a water issue. So they're, in Rockland, whatever they're using for gallons per day for water is also what they're getting assessed on the sewer side. So if there was a water issue, would you be willing to work with those people, and can you work with people like on how to evaluate liens and waivers?
I can do that. It gets back to communication. What's the problem? How did it stem? I do recall at Situate, if somebody had a blockage, we checked the manholes downstream and upstream, and you know, sometimes I had to say to them, hey, it's on you, it's not on us, and you got to call Roto-Rooter or, you know, a plumber or what have you to fix that situation, to get your toilets flushing again and your sinks draining. But your question being, can I work with people like the water department and the citizens? Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Mike, how would you rate your hands-on experience? Could you feel in the wastewater process you could step in a facility, not that you'd be required, but you're comfortable enough anywhere down the process line to step in and operate or know what's going on?
I'm very comfortable and very fascinated by it. So I've had an array of, you know, I've had some pretty good experience, I was saying array, but, you know, I've gotten dirty, I've deragged pumps, pulled pumps to derag them. So, yeah, so you know, and I'm curious to see what the process is here in Rockland, how it works, how, you know, the dewatering and, yeah.
So how, okay, with dewatering, let's go right to the next bit. What's your preferred methods to deal with sludge and its disposal? How do you deal with it down in Situate?
In Situate, we had 2 belt filter presses. But prior to that, we, you know, the influent would come in, get deragged through the bar screen, then go through aeration and the clarifiers, then there'd be the return. But eventually, it would get into a digester, and we'd, you know, aerate it for a while, then we would shut it off, it would settle, we'd skim the top off, and then we'd do that again if we had time, and eventually get that sludge as thick as we could, and then it would go to the belt filter press, and get dewatered, and it would go into a dumpster, get hauled off site. I remember when I first started at Situate, it was going up to Canada to be made into fertilizer, but then when the price of diesel went up, it unfortunately just went to landfill. I'm not sure what they're doing now, but that's what I know. I mean, there's other ways of dewatering, but I'm quite familiar with that.
But you're aware, you're well aware of the safety procedures that are required in and around the digester for the gases and...
Oh, yes, yep.
Great. So we're going to kind of move towards the management side of it and maybe a few more technical questions towards the
Sure.
end. So would you give us a brief explanation or tell us about what experience you have managing employees and if you do have that experience, how many employees have you managed in the past?
Sure. Well, the town of Situate was, back to my first wastewater job in Taunton, there was only, 5 of us, you know? Yeah, 5. But I was new to the business, but I was quick to get my grade 4. And I, you know, had personalities, not personality skills, but I could talk to people, to these guys, you know what I mean? Hey, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, you know? So it was new to me, but, you know, the chief operator there, you know, he allowed me to, you know, have Kyle do this, Matt, you know, get the guy, you know, thinking of the names there. But then, so I got my grade 4, and then there was a job opening at Situate. You know, for the longest time, they wanted a grade 5. Then when they kicked it down to grade 4, I applied and got in with the notion that I'd get my grade 5 in a year and a half. Well, I got it, you know, within a few months because it was a pay raise and the chance to work weekends. But at Situate, it was pretty much entrenched for a couple years. But then the chief operator, who'd been there for, you know, I don't know, 14 years or so, he suddenly left. There was a grade 6 there who was like the heir-to-be, if you will. But he got a job at, not to bore you with it, but he went to Deer Island, the big plant,
Okay.
up there in Winthrop. So then there was myself and another guy who were left with, I think there was 2 other guys at the time, but I had the seniority, so the town administrator said, everything good, Mike? Like, you can, you know, and in the meantime, they hired Weston and Sampson, lo and behold, to bring somebody in to be the chief operator. But, you know, I knew the plant very well. I had, you know, was quite familiar with the plant. I could run it by myself, you know, not to be boastful, but, you know, a small plant like that, you can run it by yourself, you know, not for long, but you can get away. So there was, you know, 3 guys that I was managing, helping out, you know, let's get this done, do that, you know, the day and day. But everybody knows their role, but sometimes, hey, can you do this, can you do that, you know, and I was doing that. And then they opted to bring over somebody from water. That's what happened at Situate, the water department. They brought him over, you know, I didn't get a good explanation on that, but he started assuming the duties, and I saw the handwriting on the wall, so I came over to Weston and Sampson. And I earned more money, I paid less for benefits, and it's been a win-win for me. So
Great.
anyhow, now here at Weston and Sampson, it's what they call package plants, is what I do. Smaller, you know, private sewers systems. Like, you know, one of my accounts, for lack of a better term, was, remember Chili's in Hingham? It's now a Mexican restaurant.
Yes.
Well, Hingham's not Seward, so if you have a facility like that, it's got its own little wastewater plant. It's all underground,
Okay.
you know, but there's a shed where all the controls are. So then across the street, the Big Y Plaza, again, has everything there. And then across, you know, we have accounts in Hingham, Norwell, Marshfield, out on the Cape, all over.
Right.
So you're working independent per se, but when somebody new comes on, they like to, you know, cross-train you on all these other sites, you know, for when you're on call, or if somebody's out sick or leaves the company, you know. So I would show people sites, how they work, what I'm looking at this, but what the state report is looking for, the monthly state report, and just show the guys, the newcomers, you know, how to run these plants. You know, no two are alike. They all have the little
Right.
intricacies, if you will. But in the end, you're, you know, dewatering the sludge, if that's the case, and, you know, then you're discharging to an effluent field, a leaching field, you know.
Excellent.
Yes.
In that process of, you know, right now, it sounds like it might be more training at the position that you're at now. But when you took on those responsibilities in Situate, did you have any situations where, you know, maybe an employee, there was an issue that you may have had to deal with, or a potential issue that you had to deal with?
Oh,
And how did you
sure,
handle
yeah,
that?
Yeah. You know, one of the laborer, you know, he was, you know, the guys would know, but you know, we had to hose out the clarifiers in the summertime, because they grow algae and you gotta keep it moving, and he just didn't feel like doing it, you know? The chief operator left, the other guy left, you know, but I could see, it's not getting done. You know, hey, Phil, can you get this done, please? You know, but, you know, tactfully, Phil, this is what's gotta be done, you know, and I didn't have to, you know, write him up, but it was, you know, he begrudgingly did it, you know, and I had to keep on him to do it, among other things. There was, you know, an array of things to do every day that he knew he should be doing, but I just remind him, hey, Phil, did you do this, did you do that, you know, because I was either doing the lab or the pressing or whatever else needed to be done, but he had his job description and wouldn't always do it, you know?
Okay, great, thank
And then
you.
there was another person that, you know, we did fecals there. We did our own three times a week, at least 3 times a week fecal testing, and, you know, it's a whole setup where you filter the water through the filter, et cetera. And we would autoclave them, you know, sterilize them for the next usage. There was 3 sets for the 3, you know, we had backup sets, but I just knew this guy wasn't doing it. You know, I'd say, hey, did you do your fecals yet? Oh, yeah. I said, well, nothing's moved here, and this is Wednesday. You know, we do it Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, unless it was a holiday week or what have you. Oh, yeah. I said, well, here it is Wednesday, bang them out, you know?
Right,
Well, he didn't do them on Thursday. He did it on Wednesday, but Thursday afternoon, approaching 3:30, time to leave. Did you do these? Oh, yeah, there's other, I said, where are these other sets? You know,
Right.
they were still they were in the closet, you know, he wasn't doing it. So I said, get this, please do this today.
Right.
No, actually, it was too late on Thursday, because he had to leave, but I said, you do them tomorrow? And then whoever was on call for the weekend, it'd be part of their duty, you know, to
Right.
run fecals on a Saturday, and then read them on the Sunday. So,
okay. Great, thank you.
I don't relish any of that, you know,
No.
just do your job. It's a lot easier that way, but when you have to call a spade, you do it, you know,
Right.
tactfully.
What are you doing today, like on your average day? What kind of activities or projects that you're doing now that would be related to the position of sewer superintendent?
Okay. Right now, I'm working at the town of Medfield, because their chief operator, prior to COVID, had a heart attack, he had diabetes, some other health issues. His doctor said, "You're not going back to work with this COVID pandemic on our hands." So he had the grade 7 to run that facility, but the three other guys, one has a grade 3, and the two others have, one just got his grade 1, I think the other one has a grade 2. So it's you know, you can run the place with the three guys, but you need the
Are you
grade.
doing the administrative part as well as like the assigning jobs, daily jobs?
Yeah, I'm there.
Budgets?
I'm there as the chief operator, like, so, you know, so Medfield hired Weston and Sampson to offer chief operators. I have a grade 7, there's another guy with a grade 7, so he's there 3 days a week, I'm there 2 days. You know, he does Monday, Wednesday, Friday with the COVID, that's how they want to work it.
Are you doing site visits, or construction site visits to? assure
Not
compliance?
lately, not with COVID, there's a, you know, and it's a small, it's like Situate, a small town. So I'm there as the chief operator 1 week for 2 days, and then the next week 3 days, and alternating,
Right.
and helping the guys out.
You know, in this job, you're gonna be yanked in a million different directions on a
Okay, yep.
day-to-day basis.
Sure.
How do you handle deadlines, and how do you interact with others under pressure? If you know something's gotta be done and something else has come up, how do you handle that?
I believe I handle it well. I mean, if you know, what are we at, January 29th, if something's due February 15th, where are we at in getting this done? What can I do? What's my part of the contribution, not the contribution, or what am I contributing to meet the deadline? What do you need me to do? Can I shoulder something else? Can I
Do you
write
feel you have good time management skills?
I do, I believe so, yes.
What's been your involvement in preparing annual budgets? It's on the municipal side, town meeting warrants, things of that nature.
Not a lot, Chuck, not a lot.
All right. Are you familiar with the Uniform Procurement Law?
The what?
Uniform Procurement Law, Chapter 30?
I don't want to say I'm familiar with it, but I know of it for, is that for
Okay.
purchasing equipment and upgrades?
Okay, how about grant writing? Have you ever written a grant?
I haven't.
State grant?
No, sir.
How would you handle a staff or a department or a section that's not coming across with jobs in a timely manner? Assignments, you know, finishing to your timeframe.
Say it again, Chuck, I'm sorry.
How would you deal with a section or a job that wasn't performing to your timeframe, that you said you feel could be done better or quicker? How would you handle that situation?
Like from an outside contractor or for somebody that
Either
works
or,
for
you
Suez?
pick it.
What's that?
Either or.
Either or? I would ask them, hey, where are we with this, finishing this project, whatever it is? You know, will it be done on time? Like, are you asking me like, well, so yeah, is it gonna be done on time? Are you gonna, you know, do you need more resources? Do you need more help?
Okay.
You know, how can I help? What, you know, again, communication, you know, find out what the problem is. Why are you not, you know, making better progress if you're not progressing, you know?
Okay. Stace?
And sort of carrying a little bit along that line, communication is key in this position. Customer service is very important to the town of Rockland. Who do you see as your customers as a sewer superintendent?
The rate users, you know, the citizens that are, you know, running their sinks, flushing their toilets, and all the businesses that are tied into the sewer system. That is the customers. Because if they can't use their facilities, well, they have a problem, either at home or at their business, their restaurant, you know, their industry. So those are the customers of the Rockland Sewer Plant.
And here we are today speaking, my question really is, you know, how comfortable are you speaking in public? Which, here you are a little bit today, but do your previous jobs have you speaking in public or to the public?
Well, I am comfortable with it. You know, if you know your material and what you're trying to convey, you know, it usually goes well, you know? But I know at Situate, in the spring, I think it was, I don't know, the third or fourth grade would come in, you know, a couple busloads of kids, and get a little tour. And nobody wanted to do it, but I said, I'll do it, you know? And, you know, usually it's just the teachers listening.
Right.
But I, you know, I enjoyed that. And then furthermore, back at Situate, the North and South River watershed would come in the spring and summer. And, you know, they would test, they would grab some samples for testing and do some, you know, DO readings and pH readings at our, where we were discharging our effluent. And it was usually a couple of the same people, but the other people they'd want a quick lesson on how this place works. And I'd offer that to them, you know, time permitting.
Great.
And, you know, so is it a great spectrum or a great scale of public speaking? No, but I'm okay, I believe, with public speaking.
Great, excellent. And what about management, or how much experience do you have communicating with management or, you know, department heads at that level? Are you, in your previous jobs, did you have to communicate much with management?
A bit,
and
yeah,
work
you
with
know, we'd have to
management?
do, if there was someone tying in, like a tie-in, you know, you'd have to get the as-bills, or, you know, take a look, you know, see where the stub is, and is there water? You know, is there water, you know, because the home definitely has water, you know, so I have to go to the water department to see where the water lines are. And then, you know, the gas company, you know, they'd come on their own, and the utilities, but I'm comfortable, you know, approaching other, you know, departments like within the town, right, of Rockland?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we're all on the same team per se, so, you know, as a new person, I'd be gingerly, very
Great.
tiptoeing about it, but, you know, eventually, you know, get entrenched and, you know who to talk to about what issue and what department. Like, as David said, we work a lot with the water department. So get to know those folks very well, I'm sure.
Great. And switching gears a little bit, what's your ideal boss?
Me, no.
Yeah.
The ideal boss would be someone who knows what you're capable of, won't give you too much, but give you enough to keep you busy and earning your paycheck, but will let you do it. You know what I mean? And, you know, if you can't do it, they'll be like, hey, how can I help you? I think
Have you
that'll be-
ever disagreed with your boss?
Have I ever disagreed? I have, sure.
And if you felt your boss was wrong and you really knew that the information that you had or the process that you were going to go about it was correct, how would you handle that situation?
I would, you know, tell him or her, this is what I think, this is my opinion of this situation and how we should move forward, how I'd like to move forward, and, you know, validate that. And if the boss disagrees, I'll listen to what he or she has to say about it and hopefully come to an agreement. But if he or she wants to do it their way, well, you're the boss, I'm not the boss, so we do it your way. But I don't think that would, you know, back to communication, it shouldn't be a confrontation, but, you know,
Right.
sometimes those occur for whatever reason, but, you know, hopefully the lines of communication are well open and we're both aware of that problem that's on the horizon or that we're entrenched in at this time to correct it.
Great.
Like, tell me about a work accomplishment or a project that you've done, technical or otherwise, what's your role and what was one of the challenges you had to overcome? And how'd you overcome it?
I'm sorry, say that again, Chuck?
Okay, what is a project or an accomplishment you've done in your job that you're the most proud of? What were the challenges and how'd you overcome it?
Okay, well, I'm thinking of, there's Villages at Marshfield. It's 20 buildings, I think it's 300 units apartment complex that has its own private system. And the previous operator who ran the site for like 6 years, I think, he would exclusively use Wind River Environmental, I don't know if you heard of them, but they're septic haulers. And they would come in twice a year, and it would cost villages of Marshfield, it would cost them like 90 grand to clean out the tanks, you know, and the process, you know, good 90 grand with the confined space entry permit, you know, the whole shooting match. And what I suggested when I took over the site was, let's try some other companies, see what they can do, price-wise. And in doing that, I knew one guy, I knew of him anyhow, and he said, let's do this 3 times a year, instead of doing it twice a year, you know. And in doing it 3 times a year, you know, there's not as much grease, there's not as much, you know, buildup. And it's, and doing it 3 times a year, it's cheaper for the villages at Marshfield, and it's easier, again, getting cheaper, easier on the contractor doing the work. So, you know,
So bottom line, you saves money.
saves them some money, yeah, a lot of money.
I just wanted to go back a little bit about your communication and public speaking. Have you had any experience in front of boards or commissioners or the Board of Selectmen, a finance committee, when you worked at Situate? Did you have any of that experience
No, I
participating
did
in that?
not.
Okay.
Being as the chief operator left, the, not the town administrator, but the head of the DPW took the reins on the budgeting for the sewer department, and that ties into, you know, him bringing over the water guy.
Right.
To-
Okay.
So,
No, I was
your
just
answer,
curious.
Stacy, is no.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, public speaking and communication, like you said, is key as it is, so it really, just curious, really.
I'm sure I can embrace it
Yeah.
and be successful.
Now, the sewer superintendent, safety is of the utmost importance. As you know, we're amid a pandemic, and safety precautions are, obviously, it's important for us to make sure that our staff are following safety protocol. Have you ever had to implement a safety protocol in any area or expertise of your job? Or during this pandemic, what type of protocols are you taking to keep yourself safe or your staff safe?
Well, my wife's a nurse, so
Okay.
gloves, mask, eyewear. I have Tyvek suits if need be, so, like I said, I've been doing this for almost 12 years, so I can anticipate when it's gonna be a nasty job, and glove up, you know, the eyeglasses, and these days, the mask. But getting back to, I think you said something about safety, Weston and Sampson took on a client, it's in Norwell, it's 49 homes, it's an upscale subdivision that has its own wastewater treatment plant. And they reached out to Weston and Sampson to be the contract operators to run that place. It's an RBC, I don't know if you guys might be familiar with RBCs, maybe you are too, Stacy, but anyhow, in assessing the place, you know, we have engineers that, yeah, you know, this is how much we should charge, but I noticed that the part of the process is using methanol, introduced to, you know, helps lower the nitrates, and the pump, the methanol pump wasn't what they call explosion-proof. You know, so the pump they had probably cost them, let's say, $1,500, and ran, it worked, it's fine. But it's not up to, you know, municipal codes for a wastewater plant pumping highly flammable methanol. You need an explosion, you know, so we said, hey, you're gonna have to, you know, to the client, you're gonna have to upgrade this, and the replacement, you know, appropriate was probably like $6,000, you know, a LMI pump. But, so, you know, safety is of the essence, and it's, you know, we would have been, you know, if we would have maintained that, we would have been in violation of the CMR codes. I think the CMR codes, yeah. You know, it wasn't, you needed an explosion proof, so.
Excellent. Thank you. And how do you stay current with your licenses, potential permit and regulatory updates, policies, and how do you further develop your knowledge base?
Well, I have a grade 7 license. Anybody that has a wastewater license in Massachusetts from, like right now, from let me see, last January 1st until this year, December 31st, you got to have 20, what they call TCHs, total contact hours.
Right.
10 of which can be safety. The other 10 need to be like hands-on, say lab work, not lab work, but a class on lab work, on, whatever, non-safety. And you have to have those. And my company offers the safety ones, so I take those. But the other 10, I like to, a couple weeks ago, I took a class on phosphorus removal, which they do at Medfield, and I believe they do here at Rockland. To learn a little bit about that, because
Okay.
it's fairly new to me. So I like to take different things. I've taken all the pump classes, but eventually I'll get back to the pump classes, but, get some diversity in what I'm learning, and then, we get emails from the Mass Association of Water, and if you look in those emails and go to the website, there's all kinds of, interesting related offerings on
Right.
what's going on in wastewater and the latest treatment and, et cetera, like that, so.
Great, thank
yeah.
you.
Mike, have you ever had to negotiate a conflict resolution with any of the regulatory agencies, Mass DEP, EPA?
I haven't had to do that, no, sir.
So you've never worked in a municipality that had a EPA admin order or anything like that?
Not that I was aware of at Situate, no,
Okay.
no.
Let me ask you another question. Do you feel you're qualified or prepared to to prepare the following documents without the assistance of an outside agency? Prepare a technical scope of work, request for proposal?
I could address that, definitely.
Do you feel you could prepare a comprehensive wastewater management plan on your own?
I believe I could.
How about a best management practices manual for the operation of a facility and pump stations? In that manual, include a contingency plan for system failure,
Yeah.
any system failure.
I could write that up, I believe so.
We have a study ongoing that's indicating that we're in major need of a major update in the sewer plant. And it's going to require quite a bit of expertise and knowledge on the superintendent to understand it engineering-wise and manage and plan it. Have you ever had the opportunity to be involved in a significant plant upgrade like that?
When I was at Situate, matter of fact, Weston and Sampson did a couple upgrades on some pump stations. So I was, privy to what was going on, but wasn't, I didn't have a direct hand in it, because there was, the chief operator was still there that had been there for years. So he was the point man on it, for lack of a better term, but
Could you handle it?
what's that?
Could you handle?
I believe,
a
yes, I
major
could
upgrade?
handle it, definitely.
So I think we've covered a lot of the technical management piece, so let's sort of kind of round it out and close it out a little bit. Do you think you could, from everything that you've learned today and that you've researched about the position, how does this position fit in your overall goals, and how do you feel you contribute to the town of Rockland?
Yeah, I have learned a lot, and, I do have, minutes here from previous commission meetings, which are fascinating to read through. But your question was how does this fit to me?
Yes, how does this fit in your overall career goals?
I believe it fits well, indeed. I think you and I discussed it, like 10 years ago, my father sent me an article that the management in water, wastewater, and the utilities, a lot of them were within 10 years of retiring, so there's going to be openings of such, come down the line. It's come to fruition, like this job, and, there's other positions out there. This is very appealing to me, and I do think I could contribute greatly to the town of Rockland and its scope of wastewater treatment with my experience and what I can embrace and learn on this position with an open mind and willingness to work hard and dig in. I think I could be a great asset to town of Rockland, indeed.
Excellent. If we were to offer you this position, when would you be available to start?
I could start, I'd give the proverbial 2 weeks. I could start, mid-February, absolutely. I don't know what your timeframe is on hiring, it's been a while, but,
Yeah.
I would sadly say, see you later, Weston and Sampson, but
Right.
I would, be moving on and up, I believe.
Okay.
So I would, I'm ready to give my 2 weeks' notice if I'm offered a position here and it works for me financially.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we haven't asked you about yourself that you'd like to share? Or do you have any questions for us?
Well, I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I had an economics class, and I don't know why, well, I know why, but the teacher said, the water you drink, somebody drank, 20 years ago, and then we got into the hydraulics, well, actually, that wasn't the hydraulic cycle, but we got into infrastructures and, how towns, the town of Somerset I grew up in, what was going on, it was touched on it, and then in biology, that's when we got into the hydraulic, so I've always been fascinated with water, and here I am, many years later, helping to make clean water, which is, very important to your health and well-being and life, But so this position, would I be answering to the commission or to Suez, or what's the hierarchy here?
The direct report would be to the commissioners.
Okay,
They can probably speak a little bit more to it, but the plant manager, you would be the liaison as well.
like how many
to-
people, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
how many from Suez? Like I can remember
Suez has a staff of 8,
8?
two-shift operation,
two shift?
yeah. Weekend coverage, 4 hours Saturday, Sunday.
Yep,
Um,
holidays.
The Board of Commission is really just a sounding board to see where you're coming from. Ultimately, and Dave, you could probably reply to that better, but ultimately to be to the town manager who would pass down direction.
Okay.
Dave?
No, I'm in agreement with you on that. No, so there is the hierarchy would be obviously the commissioners, and then you'd be dealing with, obviously, town administrators, selectmen, but, you would be the voice for the department. You're in charge of Suez. So
Oh,
Suez,
yeah, so I have authority over Suez?
yes,
Yes.
so
Okay.
you're managing, you would be managing the facility. Outside the facility, the pump stations, there's 11 pump stations, 2 ejector stations out in the infrastructure. And then the commissioners manage the meetings, and then you go through the commissioners on a lot of the questions, pass them off to them, so. Most of the procurement, you would be doing the procurement, but then you would be bringing it up to the commissioners for their approval on the procurement,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, that's about all the questions I have, yeah.
Okay.
Between the questions they've asked, yeah.
great.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Mike.
Thank you.
I don't-
Thanks, Mike.
So what's
Um,
next?
Right.
You got, what,
do you-
3 other candidates, and then? what-
Yes, Walter, do you want to speak to that, or
Pardon?
do you want to speak to the next piece of the process, or did you want me to?
No, you can, I just,
Okay, there's,
Wanna thank
there
Mike
are
for
4
coming.
candidates tonight that will be interviewing, and then hopefully bringing 2 finalists for most likely another interview. There is
Okay.
one sewer commissioner that is not here tonight,
Right,
so it would,
yep.
I think we'd like to extend that process to at least 2 more in hopes that he'll be able to join for the next meeting as well, or the next interview. So that's kind of, and that will be within the next month. The commissioners have a meeting next week to discuss tonight's interviews, and hopefully make a decision to pass 2 on for the following week. So within a couple of weeks to a month, we will hopefully have all of this wrapped up and
Very well.
have a new sewer superintendent hired.
Great.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you so much for your time. We
Well, thank you.
appreciate it, and your patience during the process. It was great to finally meet you in person.
Thanks, Mike.
thanks for coming. Keith?
Walter Simmons, the chairman of the board.
And,
You can have a seat, Keith.
I'd like you to introduce
Front and
to
center.
everyone. Chuck Hession is Commissioner. Stacy Callahan,
Hi, Keith.
I believe you've spoken with her before, probably. Human Resources. Dave Taylor, Interim Superintendent and Highway Department Superintendent. And we have Robin Day, Administrative Assistant for the Sewer Department. My name is Walter Simmons. And Stacy will be asking you the questions.
Hi, Keith. It's good. It's nice to finally meet you in person. We know that this has been a little bit of a process, but we appreciate your patience.
Appreciate you having me.
You're welcome. Could you, we're going to get right to it so that we can get as much information as possible throughout the interview. Can you briefly tell us about yourself, your work history, any education or special training that you've had to this point that has prepared you for the sewer superintendent position?
Sure, absolutely. I'm currently Superintendent of Public Works in another town. Deal with all aspects of highway, water, sewer. I have 5 engineering certificates. I am licensed in every aspect of infrastructure. I've been working with infrastructure for over 25 years, almost going on 28 years. Been on infrastructure my entire life. Very mechanically inclined, managerial-wise, and how to run crews, work with people, figure things out, resolve things. I'm big on education. You can never have enough education, and I'm big on, I've done public safety committees, big on safety, doing the job, and biggest thing is, providing a great service for residents and the commercial entities within the town.
Great, thank you. Chuck's going to ask you a few questions.
It sounds like you got a lot of municipal experience. How would you utilize that experience in the role of the sewer superintendent here in Rockland?
Yeah, the biggest thing is just, you start, first get to know your crew. I don't need to know the town, I know, I used to live in this town, so, I know the area and whatnot. It's get to know your coworkers, and, what are the needs of the town, what are the improvements, the capital improvements, was trouble area, was I&I that, help reduce, that's just an expense that goes to the end users, so it's just, where the improvements are the biggest things that need, or where the trouble spots.
Are you familiar with the IPP program, the NIPD's permit?
Yes, I am.
How would you assure compliance with the permitted parameters, with restaurants, commercial and business? How would you assure, how do you do it now to make sure they're in compliance?
Well, we do inspections, currently, right now, I only have a 3-man crew, so it's very, very difficult to be going up, but, we hire the services of an outside engineering firm that does all our NIPD's, permitting for us, because we're just so short-staffed, and I have 1 engineer, so, we're dealing with 120-plus miles of infrastructure, so it's hard for, myself or, my coworkers to get out there and do it, but, we use, forces of an outside engineering to, make sure that the town is in compliance with all our
Do you
NIPD's
do
permits.
sampling for the different businesses, or no? You just issue the permit and watch your monthly discharge?
That's exactly what it is. Town I'm in is an MWRA sewer community. And so everything is through the MWRA, and each individual end user has to do they do a yearly sampling and make sure that they're in compliance.
Familiar with MWRA? Tell us about your experience and involvement in I&I investigation or remediation. Do you think you could prepare an SSES study, not to do the physical work, but for a subcontractor to do on your own without an outside consultant helping you out?
As long, if the equipment's available, and you want to use your workforce that knows where there's trouble areas, you start with there, but, you take a town and you divide up into either, quarters, all depending on the size of the town, and then you do your camera work. You start your investigation that way, and then you see where you have, and you do it, you usually start in the month of March. It's high groundwater season. With COVID, it was tough this past year to start, because I'm currently in year 2 where I am right now, trying to get the town to reduce their, it's the first time ever, the town that I currently work for, that they've had a reduction in the MWRA sewer assessment. First time ever, because I started attacking the I&I. Because that cost goes on to the end users of dealing with groundwater. Just trying to make your system as tight as possible. It's all preventing leaching of, raw sewer water into there. But what you do is you break up a town, you do your camera work in a certain area, and then from there you start putting together. Okay, does it just need a lining? Does it need complete replacement? You can do spot repairs. You seal your manholes. You start where infiltration is getting into the system.
What would you use for a measurement to ascertain the success or failure of the program?
Obviously, there's metering, and just what your intake is and what your effluent is, and then you start reducing your I&I, then you start seeing your intake to the treatment plant. Your process is lowering, so obviously your effluent going out, your raw treatment is going to reduce too.
Thanks, Stace.
Currently now, it's your DPW director, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm sure you're in the trenches with only 3 people, but you're also doing a lot of higher level work. And with this position, the sewer superintendent in the sewer department, it's really the sewer superintendent, the sewer admin, and a plant that is run by Suez, but would report to the superintendent. Some of the dirty work, if you'll say, would still need to be done by the superintendent, which is inspecting the grease traps, late night calls if there's an accident for utility poles, marking dig safe, general dig safe, and late night or daily sewer blockages. Are you comfortable, knowing that this is a superintendent role, being able to do some of that, hands-on work as well?
Yeah, like I said, I'm the director where I am, and I currently do that as well.
Okay.
It's a 24/7 job. It's difficult to try and rest.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I mean, 2 years ago I was in Florida on a family vacation, and the water treatment plant town I work in, it essentially blew up, and I got them water from 1,600 miles away by a phone call.
Wow.
And, I have a lot of resources, if help is needed. I said I'm very mechanically inclined. I can talk to people over the phone how to do things if need be, but I jump right in the trenches when needed.
Great, excellent. Just a little continuing on from that, it sounds like you have quite a bit of knowledge in the area, just based on what you've spoken about so far. You're comfortable disconnecting septic over to town water?
Town sewer?
Yeah, town sewer,
Yeah,
sorry, excuse me.
It's not on my resume, but way back when, right out of high school, I used to take, that was one of the jobs I had, was taking septic tanks and putting them into, disconnecting and putting them into town connections.
Okay, great. Are you familiar with the liens, sewer liens, or,
You saw, like, for betterment or liens, people not paying their sewer portion? Yeah.
yes?
Yeah, you like, where if someone doesn't pay their, water sewer bill, yeah, I go right down to the tax collector, so this person is X behind, and, usually it's the town manager or town administrator will make the determination, or the tax collector will be like, all right, you know what, we're gonna lien their property. And,
Okay.
they'll either assess it to their taxes, or they'll lien the property, and, the town, that I've worked for in the past too, they've claimed a couple of properties because of just not paying the property tax, water, sewer, anything, so,
Okay.
yes.
Dave, did you want to add anything on that, or?
No, I think he touched on it, I mean,
Okay.
with the liens and the waivers and everything, so.
Okay. All right, great. Chuck, do you want to ask?
Yeah, what, are you comfortable with the operation of a sewer plant, each step of the process, that you feel you could jump in, you know what's going on, and you could handle it, or?
No, you know, I'll be honest with you, you know, not right away, but all I gotta do is I just gotta, you know, oversee what's going on there, and it's, you know, water treatment, sewer treatment, it's vice versa. One, you're drinking it, the other one, you gotta get it to the cleanest possible levels, because it's all about the aquatic life at the end, is getting the whole process down.
How are you currently dealing with sludge and disposal?
Say it again, please?
How are you currently dealing with sludge in disposal?
I know, we're, right now, I work for an MWRA community, it's, you know, MWRA takes care of it all.
Do you have any experience with anaerobic digesters?
No.
Okay, Stacy.
So we're just going to move on to a little bit more of the management questions, and then Chuck's going to ask some more technical questions. What experience, you mentioned some of your experience with the staff. Right now, you have 3 people that you're managing. What is the largest number of staff that you have managed?
Well,
in the
currently,
past?
right now, I just have 3 in sewer, but my whole group, I have water, sewer,
Oh.
highway, I have them all. I
Okay.
have, and my, you know, administration staff, I have 26.
Okay,
Another town that I worked for, I had 64. And then when I was in the naval base, I oversaw 150 contractors. So I can go small and I can go large.
okay. And can you give us an example of maybe when you noticed something from your staff, or maybe a potential issue that might be brewing with your staff, and how did you handle that?
So nothing infrastructure related, like current, like, what'd you say,
More
operations
managerial,
with staff
yes.
or disciplinary type?
Exactly.
Okay, yes, I have a small group currently where I am that are just known troublemakers, and I document everything. I don't, and I build the case, I bring it to HR, I bring it to the town manager, present everything to them, and then it's, okay, you know, how do you want to go? This is, you know, it's a problematic person, you don't just go to suspension unless there's something really wrong, theft,
Right.
drugs, alcohol. But, you know, you have to go progressive, you know, it has to be a verbal warning, written warning, then suspension. But, you know, if the offense is something of substantial, then it could go to termination. But run everything through HR and through the town administrator, town manager before anything goes further.
Thank you.
On your day-to-day job now, what kind of projects or what do you do that's related to the sewer department, superintendent?
Currently, right now, I am on a massive sewer main break. It's been going on for 10 days. We have to replace over 500 feet through an easement, 15 feet deep, nothing but sand and water. We're excavating with 3 vectors, so it's quite an ordeal. But aside from that, capital improvement projects, I said I'm in year 2 of I&I program. You know, COVID kind of put things into a halt for the time being, but, you know, I started doing my camera work, and then it got shut down because of the COVID. The contractor we're using was nervous with, you know, the influx with the COVID. I've replaced 3 pump stations, replaced all the pumps, and at 2 of them, my workers would be there 2 to 3 times a day because of clogs, wipes, everything, you know, and just high water alarms. Since I've put in these new pumps, these new grinder pumps, they haven't had 1 alarm.
You know, as the sewer superintendent, I'm sure you're familiar with this, you're pulled in a million different directions. How do you feel your time management skills are, and how do you act under pressure?
I love pressure. It doesn't bother me, because you take the highest priority. What is going to cause the most public harm is priority number 1. And then you just gotta prioritize things. Can't do it all at once, but, you know, you try to make it happen, but you just gotta keep in communications with the person or entity that's calling you for an issue.
What's your involvement and experience in developing an annual budget for your department? And have you ever prepared a warrant for town meeting?
Absolutely. I do it all. I'm constantly doing, 5-year capital plans, always, okay, what are the needs? What does the department need? Also, what does the town need? But, yearly budget, I do it all the time. For going into the next year's budget, I take a 3-year look back, and I take my averages. You see trends. Is part of the budget growing, or is part of it decreasing? And, they're always growing, but, you gotta, sometimes you gotta give a little, and you gotta take a little.
What's your batting average on success rate on each line item?
Well, we'll leave the town that I'm currently with right now out of it, but, and the other place I've been very, very good, as long as you can back up your reasons for, why you need, especially if an increase is substantial, you better be able to back it up. And usually I come with, I document everything I said, and, when I'm asking for something, I want to be able to answer any question possible.
Okay. So you're familiar with uniform procurement law?
Oh, procurement, yes.
Okay. Have you ever had to write a grant? Have you had any grant experience as writing?
Knock on wood, I'm very successful with grant writing,
Really?
yes.
Can you give me an example of one?
Yeah, actually, I just, 3 weeks ago, was awarded the Winter Shared Streets Grant through the Commonwealth. I got $225,000 to revitalize part of the square community I'm in. I got a $1,078,000 I&I grant through the MWRA. And I got a little bit over $1 million Safe Water Act for water treatment plant.
Did you have to get others involved in that, or did you prepare that on your own? Did you have,
The first one I talked about, the Winter Shared Streets Grant, 100% on my own. MWRA was phone call. I filled out the paperwork and then phone call, because I used to work at
I
MWRA
worked
too,
with
so I had, and so it's not to say I got it because, just connections, but I knew how to, what was needed, the information needed to back the grant up to solidify it. And then, said a lot of contacts with engineering firms and whatnot, and talk with them, like who's got the in for some grants, and it's a lot of it's, connections.
okay, when you're under the gun to write a grant, and you've delegated some authority to get you information, how do you handle that individual to get you the information you need in a timely manner?
Well, if it's a coworker, I share all my contacts with, because one, if I'm not around for some reason and whatnot, and there's a grant opportunity that's out there, and there's a deadline one, I want to make sure that there's someone within my staff that is also there to help in case, like I said, if I'm tied up with, to say there's some kind of sewer malfunction, and there's a deadline on a grant that, just came out available that is a short time. I have no problem delegating.
Great, thank you.
Customer service is really important to the town of Rockland. And if you were the sewer superintendent for the town, who do you think would be your customers?
Who are the customers? The end users, the residents, the commercial owners, the restaurants, it's just everybody that's within the town, town employees, or even, but everybody that uses the sewer, the water and the sewer system, obviously, is, I don't call them customers, I call them residents, and they're paying the rates.
Great. And here we are today, so you're speaking a little bit in public, but overall and outside of even this interview, do you have a chance to speak publicly? Are you comfortable with it?
I can talk to a rock and get a response. I network, I don't have any problems parking at the furthest parking spot. And I'll walk by everybody and I'll say hi, introduce myself. I'm very, very sociable. I want people to get to know me, if I'm the candidate, because you want people to be able to just be comfortable to talk to you. And I said, I can talk to anybody, I'm not shy.
Right. And also with this position, there's a lot of communication with the commissioners, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee. it sounds like you're already involved in that process where you mentioned that you prepare budgets and town meeting procurement. Is this something that you do regularly with your position now or in past positions, and you're comfortable working with
Oh, yeah.
the various committees?
Most government, you have to keep, Board of Selectmen, commissioners, whatever it is, you have to keep them involved in everything, let them know what's going on, especially if also you have some kind of disaster that, you might be in emergency funding, like the situation that going on right now. I put everything in writing for the town manager, and that, we have a major sewer failure, and I already did all the cost estimates. It's gonna be, you have to go to either rainy day fund or retained earnings, when the enterprise fund to cover the cost on this.
Okay. All right, great. How about your boss? Who's your ideal boss? What qualities does that person have?
Loaded question, I am.
Yeah.
An ideal boss is somebody that is, not intimidating, can work with others, and it's not my way, the highway. Like I said, when we come across a situation, I don't go out there guns blazing, this is what you're gonna do, you're gonna do it like this. I said, bring the crew together, like, okay, we have this major, for instance, this sewer main failure through an easement, and I say, I need your institutional knowledge, because you guys have been around longer than I have, of, the location we're in. Get this, and I'll just make an approach, and I draw a lot of plans up. I could take out a Dunkin' Donuts napkin, draw it all out, take elevations to it, okay, this is what we need to do. I said, it's not my way. I have a little huddle up first. And, because you don't want to just throw a bucket in the ground and start digging. You want to do all your research first and make sure that what you're going to do is going to be successful.
Great. And if you were in that huddle and your boss is in there as well, and, maybe you're not agreeing with exactly what that next step is, how do you handle that if you disagree with your boss?
Yeah,
and you feel as though
you don't argue, because arguing's just going to make it worse. You're just trying to, let's just talk common sense here. I just want to let you know. And you don't say, oh, I've done this before, it's not right. You make them aware of, okay, if we don't want to try what you're thinking, this is what the end result could potentially be. So, you try and talk to it, and you want to compromise. You want to just make sure that what the solution is, it's going to be successful and it's going to be safe.
Great. Thanks. Chuck?
Tell me about, hopefully sewer-related, one accomplishment, or what was the most technical, challenging project you've worked on to date, sewer-related? What was the challenge, and how'd you overcome it?
Well, in the naval base, that developed there, it was, expanding the sewer, because when I first started there, there was 2 houses. It was okay, the master developer was in charge of the whole thing, but I was the inspector of all utilities in there, and it was just trying to make them aware, pad and paper looks great, but you gotta go to realistic things. This is, proposed development is gonna be, in this area, and sewer, you can't just put pump stations wherever you want. You need gravity, you need, everything's gonna work out. And it was tough, very, very tough, dealing with some of the developers in there. I'm sure you're all aware of the,
Just when it was Southfield, Union Point?
when it was Southfield, I was with the, the first entity that was in there, not the master developer. I was with the government side.
Okay.
And just trying to, working with that developer, the first, I should say, master developer, it was challenging. But it was just, it wasn't like, oh, I'm sticking to my guns, but it was just making them aware of, this cause and effect with everything, and getting them on board with proper infrastructure. The biggest problem they had in there was no oversight before I got there. There was no oversight on the inspection. So, when you got a master developer that's looking for profit, things weren't going as right. And then when I took over, and said, we're going to go by bylaws, we're going to go by rules, regulations, and you're going to do things properly, because when that master developer hits the road, it's going to be up to whatever entity that's taking over the infrastructure there, it's gonna be on their lap. So finally, it was just a lot of push, but finally got that they were gonna comply with proper, ways of installing infrastructure. And it was, a majority of it was the sewer. Right? They were just, wanting to put sewer wherever they wanted.
So it was give and take, but you felt you came across on top of that. You got what you wanted ultimately?
Yeah, and I don't like to say I got what I wanted. I got what was best for
What was best,
what
okay.
was gonna be,
Good answer.
for the community.
Thank you.
Safety. We are amid a pandemic, as you know, and safety is of the utmost importance. What safety precautions have you implemented through this pandemic to keep your staff safe and/or yourself?
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question because the town manager I am has a different philosophy with DPW. But my thing is that, no one goes into, a residential or commercial entity. It's, backdoor access, it's not that no one can be home, but there'd be no, residents in the basement or whatnot, because 99% of the time it's in the basement. That, backdoor access, just leave the lights on. We'll, as little, people in the same shared space. Guys, in the morning, you stay in your own personal vehicle. I go out to you, or, the foreman will go out to you with your work orders, and then you go to your truck, one guy in a vehicle, and if you have to be two people in a vehicle, have your masks on, and just social distancing is the biggest thing. But, I'm sorry, but just to get back to safety, like I said, I've been on safety committees. My biggest thing is making sure everybody goes home the same way they came in, but a little bit dirtier.
Yeah. All right. And how about licenses, staying current with licenses and potential permit and regulatory updates, or further develop your knowledge base in the area? What types of things have you done to this point or that you do regularly?
I am a huge supporter of licenses and having people licensed. When I took over where I am, there was, this gentleman had licenses, but they weren't supported, and I have everything timelines. I have everyone's things on a calendar. Okay, when your license expires, and then, granted, everyone's usually expires at the end of the same year.
Mm-hmm.
But even with the hoist and engineer's license, it's always on their birthday, and now everyone's like, okay, you need your CEUs this year. So, but I organize classes, and I bring in an instructor, and I will call other communities, because the more people you bring in, it's less cost on each, individual, which, if the town's paying for it, it's less cost. But I'm a huge supporter of having licenses, and got, workers that don't have a license, I let them know what the advantages are, that, it's gonna be more money in your pocket in the long run, and if you'll just say, if you wanna move on, a license, holding a license is huge, especially, there is not enough licensed operators in all aspects of the infrastructure out there now. I mean, a lot of the older generations is retiring, which they weren't required to have licenses. The ones that have it, it's great, but a lot of them are kind of like, kind of old and stuck in their ways. I'm like, never had it, don't need it, and they're
Right.
incredibly smart. They know their job. They weren't required to have a license. But the new generations that are coming in, I promote having a license. It's a huge advantage.
Good. What types of things do you do for yourself to keep yourself up to date with policies and regulations and
I'm a member of a lot of organizations, and I attend a lot of conferences, to keep current with things. Engineering firms that I do work with, I stay in touch with them. Anything new coming down the pike, with EPA, DEP, I have a lot of contacts. I get their newsletters all the time, so I keep up with as much, because whatever town you're within, they got to comply too. It's not just the individual; it's the town.
Great. Jeff?
Do you currently have a Mass wastewater license?
Yes, I do.
What
I have
level?
a collections too, and I have a wastewater operators too.
What level wastewater?
Two.
This is a 5. Would you have any problem upgrading?
No, not at all.
Did you ever have to do a conflict resolution with EPA or Mass DEP?
Say that again?
Did you ever have to enter into conflict negotiation with Mass DEP or the EPA?
Conflict negotiations?
Were you ever, in an audit, were you ever hit with the non-compliance that you had to discuss with them in?
Oh, like an ACO?
Right.
Yeah, no. I inherited an ACO, currently where I am right now. It was, on the water side, and resolved that. I took what, was handed down by DEP to become into compliance. It was ignored by the previous person doing my job, and I got the town back into compliance. I have a lot of contacts, DEP, both on the water and the wastewater side. Like I said, it's not that I get what I want, I have a very good working relationship. and
What about
professional-
EPA?
EPA, I have a couple contacts over there, and I get along with them great. Like I said, as long as you're upfront and let them know, it's the ones that lie and try to cover things up where it goes really south with them.
So you have had experience with administrative orders or consent orders,
Correct.
and you have you participated in corrective actions.
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you just questions that, for as far as technical writing. Have you ever prepared or feel qualified to prepare technical scopes of work, RFPs, and other proposals?
Yes, I have.
How about a comprehensive wastewater management plan? Do you feel you could do that without an outside assistance?
I probably could, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say 100%, but I just start reading through it, and I could probably get through it.
How about a best now, we're just talking on the sewer side.
Sure.
How about a best management practice plan for the facility, pump stations? In that plan, have a contingency plan
Oh,
for
absolutely.
system failures.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, we have currently, Rockland has a comprehensive wastewater study out now. So we are going to be looking at significant plant upgrade in the very near future. And that's going to require a lot of hands-on experience from the superintendent and engineering technical knowledge on it. Have you ever been involved in such an upgrade?
I've currently, right now, where I am, the water treatment plant, I said I was in Florida and the thing blew up, and we're almost done with a $4 million upgrade.
Or what's your involvement and responsibilities in that project?
Oh, even the engineers, they won't have a meeting unless I'm there, because, a lot of technical aspects they go through, pumps, what pumps are you comfortable with, even process on the plant. The plant that it is right now is 1888. When I first started there, the newest pump was 1975. It was, I walked into the House of Horrors, and it was horrendous. And but with the engineering firm that was hired, there's just a lot of meetings on, okay, what is the best solution? And this is all just temporary, because there's a new treatment plant that's being built on the horizon. But it was a process just to get this plant up and running, too, on a temporary point until these new pumps were installed. It was, what do you think? And said, I made one phone call to MWRA. I need a raw suction pump outside.
Okay, let's take that one step further.
Sure.
How about as far as we're talking on the suicide?
Sure.
Are you comfortable with, or could you be comfortable with debating with an engineer on a process that he would recommend? If you weren't comfortable, could you present the case of why you weren't comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. There's always, you don't want to just take an engineer's word right up front, because you don't know how much, is really necessary. As I said, when I have doubt, I ask a lot of questions.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. If, from everything that you know about Rockland, or that you've learned today or through this, through the process, leading up to this point. How does Rockland in this position fit into your overall goals? And what do you feel you would contribute to the town of Rockland?
Said, I'm very comfortable in the town. My daughter still lives in the town. I bring a lot of experience. Like I said, I'm not afraid to tackle things, take things on. The more you throw at me, the better. I love being busy. I love being productive. And, the biggest thing is you make the end users happy. It's success. And I know that's what I bring. Every place I've been, I've brought in, my knowledge, my experience, in the ability to work with people, not against them. It brings for a successful department.
Great. Is there anything that you want to tell us about yourself that we didn't ask?
Like I say, I'm very, very technically inclined, mechanically inclined. I have a lot of education, experience, knowledge, connections. I'm a very productive person.
Great.
And I said I have a very good management style. I like working with people, not against them.
Excellent. Do you have any questions for us?
No. You've asked a lot of thorough questions. So, I think you got everything out there.
Good. Do you have any more questions, Chuck, or are you?
No, I'm pretty much all set.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
All right, no, thank you very much
We
for
are
having me.
looking, the commissioners are meeting next week, so in the meantime, they'll be reviewing all 4 candidates and meeting next week with the intention to have 2 final candidates
Sure.
that they plan to meet within, I think, within the week after that or 2 weeks. So within the next 3 weeks or so, hopefully we'll have the new sewer superintendent. So
Okay,
we
excellent.
will definitely be in touch following next week.
Okay, great. No, thank you very much for having me.
All right, great. So nice to finally meet you.
You too. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
take
Thanks a
care.
lot.
Thanks, Keith.
You know everyone, but you know Chuck Ketchum? Chuck? Stacy Callahan,
I don't-
Human Resources.
Hi, I'm Stacy. It's nice to finally meet you. I'm not sure if his is
Dave
working.
Taylor. Interim
I
sewer
turned it on.
commissioner.
It's green.
Oh, there it is.
It's on.
It's on.
I got the
Doesn't
broke.
reinforce sound in the room.
Yeah.
It's only for TV.
Okay.
I got the broken one.
No.
And all right.
And Robin Day, Administrative Assistant Sewer.
All right.
Hi, Gary.
No, we good? All right. So, hi, Gary. It's nice to
Hi.
meet you. We've had conversations and emails throughout this process, so it's nice to finally
Yeah,
put a face with a name.
right,
We're going to get right into it.
all right.
So can you tell us briefly about yourself, your work history and education, and how you feel as though it's prepared you for this job?
Okay. I'll start with my education. I went to Rockland High and South Shore Tech, and I did general studies and stuff, and I was going to go into the military, Marines, and follow all my my father and brothers, but I had crashed on a motorcycle and dislocated a kneecap, and that dream was gone.
It's too
So then I started at the sewer treatment plant, picked up an application, and I've been there since, 28 years.
bad. Wow, 28 years?
Yep.
Wow,
And
that's great.
I'm an operator down there, and I could take over any position there besides the management, you know, because can't do that. But I can do a lab tech, I can take care of anyone. I'm like 3 guys in one.
Okay. Great. Excellent. I think Chuck has some questions.
Gary,
Okay.
these general questions we're asking everyone.
Okay.
So with the municipal experience you've had down at Rockland, the 28 years,
Yeah.
how would you utilize that experience in your role as the sewer superintendent?
Well, the superintendent deals with the public, we just deal with the plant. But I've been helping the superintendent before the Dave Taylor came down and took over a little bit. But I deal with backups and general emergencies like power outages, and I handle those very good.
Have you ever had to do any of the administrative work in the department?
Just a little bit, timesheets and stuff like that, and I don't get to do data entry. That's up to administration.
All right, are you familiar with the IPP program, specifically the NIPD's permit? And how would you assure compliance with the parameters with, say, restaurants, commercial, and industrial users?
So you're talking about grease traps and commercial and industrial. Well, we have some industrial in Rockland, but very little. But I could brush up on that. And grease trap inspections, you got a schedule of pumping it down, each grease trap.
Okay. Have you had any experience in the 28 years with the I&I program, investigation or remediation? And do you think you could prepare an SSES scope of work to go out to a subcontractor to do?
So you're talking about looking at the collection systems if we have.
Right, the sewer system evaluation.
So I did that night work with John Laughlin, and I could put together programs like that.
Could you write a scope of work to hand off to a subcontractor, say, here's the investigation, here's how I want you to do it?
Right, then you get your 3 bids, and you get the lowest bidder.
Okay. How would you, okay, you have a SSES program in place, let's say. How would you measure, or how would you find or determine if it was successful or not? What would you use?
Well, I'd use my previous investigations. I'd look in the folder and see what we got there. So if I had, we have 11-to-1 ratio, taking gallons out, I would look at my previous flow through the years and see if I've done it.
Thanks, Dave.
So you mentioned the grease traps, and
Yeah.
the superintendent job is, has a lot of, managerial type level of professional work, but where there is only, as you know, only one superintendent
Right.
and the admin, and then the plant that reports to the superintendent. some of the dirty work still needs to be done, or the hands-on work would still need to be done by the superintendent. Are you comfortable with the grease trap inspections?
Yep.
Some of the late-night calls that are relating to accidents hitting the utility poles, you might
Right.
have to mark out dig safe.
Yeah.
And like late night and daily sewer blockages, are you comfortable with having to do that type
Yeah,
of work?
no problem. Plus, you got your new inspections, new tie-ins, new people tying in, new development, and you got your contractors, they tie it in, and you inspect. Make sure the drawings, you can draw it, they can draw it and make sure it's put back in the file. And so if it's ever dug up and you have to mark it out, you can mark off the house and the lateral's there. The
Okay.
previous ones, you'd open up the file and it's blank, so you're on your own. So you
Okay.
just gotta guesstimate and have the contractor dig slow.
Okay. All right, thank you. And what's your general knowledge of disconnecting from septic over to town sewer?
Well, we look on the plans and see if the stub is in the street where the engineer said, and once they connect, they have to cave in the septic system, and you watch that be filled in.
Okay. And how familiar are you with liens? And there's waivers on sewer and liens that have to do with the sewer, the public, and the payment of their bills, and that's, are you familiar with that process?
I've saw it a couple times with the secretary had a list of liens and stuff,
Okay.
and houses being torn down and they have to cap.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Dave? Did I?
No,
just
I
wanna
mean,
make sure
Gary
the
has that,
question's right.
he has that experience with the sewer surface blockages and everything, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm asking the question
Okay.
completely
Yeah,
for Dave. Chuck, you want to?
Yeah, Gary, I understand we have to ask these questions for every
Yeah.
candidate, because I'm almost embarrassed to ask you this, too. So, what's your actual hands-on experience in the day-to-day operation of the wastewater system?
day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
It would be rounds and running the press and helping the superintendent if he had any call-outs for a backup, and I could just come right off and go with him. We're in a separate truck right now because of COVID.
Gary, listen, I'm one guy that knows you know that place inside and out.
Yep.
So just bear with me, okay?
Yep.
And the next question, we had to deal with sludge and the disposal. I know how we deal with the sludge and disposal, so I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit on this.
Okay.
Okay, right now we have anaerobic digesters.
Yep.
Would you keep them, or would you do something different?
I know the specs with the new upgrade, they want to get rid of them, but I think you should keep them.
Why?
Because they're good for composting if we were ever to compost. And it would bring down the costs instead of bringing it and get it incinerated in Rhode Island. It would bring the cost down, but right now you cannot compost. So the future, we'll see what happens
Yeah.
with the upgrade and stuff.
But you're comfortable with I know you're comfortable with the operation and the safety measures involved, you know
Yeah.
everything's gotta be done with that.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Plus the upgrade of the boiler, we just can't do it yet because they're saying, what was it? That we don't have the safeties on the boiler or something like that. I'm not sure, but I gotta look at the paperwork again. That's not,
Like
I'm
I
not-
said, bear with me, I
Yeah,
I
I'm
have
not-
to ask these questions, and
Yeah.
I know you know the answers, man. This is your own.
Well, I have to ask these questions, but I don't know you well enough, so I'm
Okay.
learning as we go along. What experience do you have managing staff, whether in this position or previous? And what's the largest number of employees that you have managed, if you have managed staff?
managing staff. So when we go out in a work site, say they assign me to work with a crew at night, I manage that crew and we get the job done. So if we had a special, like about 5 years ago, we had to remove the snow off the roof and I had to manage the snow removal. These guys were working slow So I tried to figure, they were doing snow blowers, and I said, hey, that's not gonna work. So I said, you guys are roofing guys, why don't you guys take an hour break, go get wheelbarrows and shovels. And they came back, and we dug out sections, and it was done in 2 days. They had 5 days to do it, that was the contract, I done it in 2. So I saved the town money, and we got the job done.
Excellent. How many guys did that? for
I
you?
would say 5 guys.
5?
Some, 2 of them couldn't speak English, but I worked around that, and I just pointed, we got it done.
Great, thank you. Have you, in that situation or in another situation, have you had to deal with a potential staff issue, and how did you handle that?
A staff issue,
Was there something that you,
somebody didn't
Didn't
show
bring-
up. Okay. During, when we run the contract, if somebody doesn't show up, I just do their job anyways. And
okay,
get it done, and they do mine too, and get the job done. We don't call in extra guys, because there is no extra guys.
okay. If you were frustrated with something that was going on with another employee, maybe you have a disagreement on the way you should do, you know, something at the plant, how would you handle that situation?
I would say, is something going on at home? And if there is, I'd say, hey, why don't you take the rest of the day off, take it easy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Call me back if you can't come back, and we can work things out.
Chuck, I think you could.
Right, Gary, in the day-to-day job you're doing now, how would you relate that to the position of sewer superintendent? What tasks are you doing now that the superintendent does, or that you feel you would be taking over?
I would say the superintendent deals more with the public and the contractor, Suez, that's running the plant now. Make sure the job is done at the plant, and make sure you're satisfied with what they're doing, and you're satisfying the public and the commissioners.
In your situation, do you think you'd have a problem with managing Suez personnel right now, where you currently work with them? Do you think that'd be uncomfortable for you?
No, it would not.
Okay, you know the job that the sewer superintendent does, and he's pulled in a million different ways.
Yep.
Every day. How would you organize your day, and how would you prioritize? And how do you think you act under pressure?
Act under pressure, very good.
Okay. How do you plan your day out, or your week?
I usually roll out of bed around 5. It doesn't matter if I go, and at 7, it's the day off. I just start my day. So maybe I'll exercise in the morning, have a good breakfast, and write down what I want to do throughout the day. If I had callbacks on certain situations, I'd make sure I visit these people, call people, and if I had to meet with other staff, but if there was ever an emergency, that this list would be no good. The emergency would be first.
In your 28 years down there, did John ever get you involved in when he prepared his annual budget? Did you ever help him out with that, or town meeting warrants?
Town meeting warrants, yes. During, if I needed to replace a pump, I'd say, hey, I got a couple pumps I'm looking at, different makes and models, and I'd look up, see which one's better. Of course, you can't get the best one because it's too much money, but you'd probably meet in the middle.
Did you ever have to help them write the documentation to present to town hall?
A little bit, just,
Probably the technical specs?
I'd have they have an engineering firm that looks at the specs and see what we need for a pump, what size. So that would probably, I just helped a little.
Okay. Are you familiar with the uniform procurement law as far as purchasing?
Yes.
The state law, you are familiar
Yep,
with it?
a little bit, and I know what the budgets are and what you need. Once you go over a certain point, you need 3.
But have you ever had any training or attend any seminars on the,
Not really. But I am familiar with it.
All right. Have you
Would
ever
you be
had?
willing to?
Pardon me?
Do you mind if I, would you
Sure,
be
no, go ahead.
willing to attend,
Yes.
to learn? Did-
Oh,
He
um,
answered, sorry.
Have you ever had any experience writing grants, with helping John write grants or things of that nature? Investigate possible funding for a project?
Looking for the money, if it's in the, writing up an article, just a little bit, not too much.
You've worked here for 28 years, so I think you probably know that customer service is important to the town of Rockland.
Right.
If you were to be promoted to the sewer superintendent, who do you believe would be your customers?
The public is my customer.
And how would you, are you comfortable speaking to the public and working out situations
Yes.
that might arise?
Yep.
Okay.
Because once you get called out to a backup at a person's house, it's flooded, they were all upset, and you go, hey, I'm here to help. And it calms them right down. Then you do your investigation, clean it out, and they're so happy. And you can set them up with, person to clean the house, make it look better, clean it up with bleach and any carpentry work, you can make suggestions. You can't just say, use this guy, but you make a suggestion.
Good, excellent. Have you had any experience with written correspondence to the public? When you go out to maybe handle, take care of that situation, do you ever have to follow up with written correspondence or?
I do a follow-up visit and say, hey, how's it going? It's still good? Say they had roots in the pipe, and I'll check a little bit later and make sure, get rid of that bush if they had the bush in the front.
Okay. Okay. And in your current position, do you interact, you did mention that you actually did interact with the previous superintendent,
Yeah.
John Laughlin, so you're comfortable speaking with management and
Yeah.
having conversations about what's best for the department and working through
Right.
with maybe the Board of Selectmen? Are you comfortable going in front of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, your sewer commissioners? Is that something you're familiar with or that you'll be comfortable with?
Yeah, you got your list and you ask what you need in financing. Sometimes they won't have it in the budget, so you go, hey, I need really this emergency topic number one. So you'd say, hey, I need this, because if I don't replace that piece of equipment, this will happen, and that will be bad. And it will cost more now, right then than right now. Say I'm asking for $10,000, it will cost $200,000 in damage, or more.
How would you describe your ideal boss?
Ideal boss. Don't beat around the bush and get right to the point. Get the job done. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it.
And what if he or she did tell you what to do and you thought, you disagreed, you thought that you knew that there was a better way to do it, or that you knew something that your boss didn't know? How would you approach that or handle that?
I'd have 3 different scenarios and say, hey, you can do this, that, or this. Give them choices.
Sure. Sure.
Hey, Gary, in all the years you've been down there, why don't you tell us about one technical job that you've accomplished, and what challenges it presented to you, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Job that when we were cleaning out the big digester, and there was a big hairball the size of a car, and the contractor said, I can't get that out. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, our guys can do it. We'll chop it out. We'll vector it out. It was hard at first, but we got it out and vacted it out and got the job done. And the contractor was very happy because he couldn't do it, and we had to get this tank back online in 10 days. So it had to be done.
How many days did it take you to get back online?
We took care of that in 2 days, and it was back online in 4 days. So it takes time to fill. We've got to do our checks, safety checks, so we did it fast.
Great. So as you know, we're amid a pandemic, and safety is of the utmost importance. What safety precautions have you implemented throughout the pandemic for your staff and/or yourself?
Well, we wear our mask at work, and we do our temperature checks, and we don't let the public in.
Okay.
And I try not to travel too much, you know, go to work, home, grocery store, maybe pick up the kids for school when they have school.
And how do you stay current with your license? Are you, what license do you have?
I am a grade 5.
Grade
There's
5.
7 grades in Massachusetts.
Okay.
I have to have 20 contact hours, 10 a year, every 2 years. So they renew it every 2 years.
Okay.
So we do classes online and get contact hours.
Great. Is there anything else you do, maybe on your own time, to keep yourself and your knowledge base up to date and,
I drive to different construction sites and see how things are going there, and just stop by and see how new development it is, new houses are built.
great. Chuck?
Gary, have you ever been involved in one-on-one with the DEP or the EPA down there as far as if they commit on a non-compliance, you know, a conflict situation? Have you ever had to be involved, like with Dave Burns, to negotiate your
Yep.
way through?
When we broke a sludge line down in the basement, Dave Burns came and he took pictures and said how we were dealing with this and how it happened, and I showed him how it happened. He took pictures, and we had this pumper trucks pumping out, and once it was done, I took pictures, and he was satisfied, along with Rick along my side. I did all the dirty pictures where I got in my hip boots and took pictures, and that's where the problem came from.
But you work one-on-one with Dave through
Right.
that?
Yep, because Rick said, hey, I'm gonna take care of the pumper trucks with this guy, you stay with Dave, and just talk to him.
And any of the non-compliances we've had down there, has Rick ever got you involved in the corrective actions?
Yes,
Which ones?
he called right away with the sludge line, or if we have a major flooding, he'll call right away. And we'll staff the plant and report when we begin and when we end, and we'll say we're out of it.
All right, have you ever
We
had
write a report.
have you ever had in writing document those corrective actions for him?
I just gave quotes and he typed it up, Rick, of what happened.
You know, funding down there is pretty much at a minimum, so
Yeah.
what we have to do is, especially with this COVID and the budget impact, we gotta really find someone who's good to be capable of writing technical work. Do you think you could write technical scopes of work, RFPs, you know, requests for proposals, stuff like that?
Yep. I have this new sump pump program I'm gonna put out. And you can work with the public. It's gonna take a little bit of money, but the 11-to-1 ratio is not working.
Well,
So,
could you write out a scope of work to give to an engineering firm, say, here's what I need done?
yes,
All right, do you think you could write a comprehensive wastewater management plan?
a plan, I'd look at the previous plans and maybe compare it and see what I got to their plan.
how about what they call a BMP, or Best Management Practice Plan? And what that is you look at your facility and how it operates. Could you write a step-by-step how to do for each step of the way? And in the meantime, slide in a contingency plan. Here's operation one, what we do for the influent, yada, yada, and should it break down, here's what we have to do.
So you want me to write up a backup system?
What I
That
would
would
like to do
replace-
is, like, if you had to write a manual for someone to come in and say, okay, here's station one, what does it do? They could look through, say, okay, it takes the influent, crosses it through the grit chamber, things like that. Could you write that out?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like an SOP?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, now, you know we've got a study going on now
Yep.
on the condition of the plant. It's pretty much indicating we need a major upgrade. Have you ever been involved in a significant upgrade down there, like hands-on?
When they put the lab on, that was just adding a building only, and I saw that construction.
How about the digester work? Were you involved in that?
Yep.
That's all I have.
Okay. You've worked, again, you've been here for a long time. 28
Yep.
years is a long time. What have you learned through this process and your experience that you feel would put you in a position to be the next superintendent? How does this fit into your overall goals?
My overall goals. I look at his position, he deals with the public, and I work along with contractors. I'm trying to think here. Just watching other contractors, I guess.
Do you feel like this is the next logical step in your career path?
Yes, I think so.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself that we haven't asked? Or do you have any questions for us?
Let's see, no,
Okay.
but I live 1 mile from the plant, and I'm the backup. If the superintendent had a problem, I could meet him at the problem and start seeing what the problem was, or if another guy had a problem, I'd meet him. So I'm the backup.
Okay.
I'm the first one there, because I'm the closest.
Okay, great. So I don't have any more questions. If you don't have any questions for us, do you have any more questions? Okay. So we're looking to, the commissioners have a meeting next Thursday. So from now until then, they'll be reviewing all 4 candidates.
Okay.
And we'll be hopefully determining 2 finalists that they'll move on for a final interview. So hopefully within the next 3 weeks or so, we will have a new superintendent.
Okay.
And we will be in touch with you and let you know once they make that final decision.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you so much. It was very nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you today.
Thanks, Gary.
I have
Gary, thanks a lot.
3
Thank you, Gary.
recommendation letters.
Oh, sure. We can take those.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Brian Kiley. Nice to meet you. And I'll introduce to the rest of the family here.
How we all doing tonight?
Good, how you doing,
Hi.
Brian?
Brian,
Late night, huh?
this is Commissioner Chuck Hession,
Chuck, nice to meet you.
and we have Stacy Callahan,
Hi,
Human
nice to meet
Resource
you.
Nice to
Director,
meet you. Nice to put a face with a name.
Right, exactly. It's been a while.
Yeah.
and Dave Taylor, Highway Superintendent, and
How are you, Brian?
interim
Hey, Dave.
Sewer Superintendent. Myself, Walter Simmons, and then I think you met Robin. She's the administrative assistant at the sewer department. Now, Stacy will continue with the interview questions.
Okay.
Hi, Brian.
Well, thank you all for having me, first of all.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for
Thank you
coming.
for coming and being patient during this process. It is nice to finally put a face with the name after all the correspondence up to this point. So we're going to dive right in and get into it, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good.
Can you briefly tell us about tell us about yourself, your professional work, history, education that has brought you to the point to prepare you for the superintendent position?
Sure. So currently, I'm the Assistant Director of Wastewater Operations at the Town of Hull. Essentially, an assistant superintendent with a different title, but same thing. So I've got about 15 years experience in construction and engineering combined. I was originally in construction management, but then went back to school for engineering because I wanted to be a professional engineer. So fortunately accomplished that goal, and I was really happy about that, and went into consulting engineering. Was in water and wastewater in consulting for a number of years, and then went over to the public sector, and I've been in Hull for 2 years now. It's been a great experience. I like working for a municipality. I like the fact that I can manage things more at a higher level versus, in a consulting role, you really focus on the technical aspect of things. But I think it's been a great experience that, not only having experience with the technical part of things, but also legal, contractual matters and municipal budgeting, procurement, and all these things that I really wouldn't have been exposed to necessarily as a project engineer in a consulting firm.
Mm-hmm.
But, as a assistant director at a sewer department, it's been really great experience. So I'm really happy to be where I am.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had 2 years municipal work?
I have, yeah.
Okay. Based on the 2 years that you've had working with municipal in your previous background, how would you utilize that role as a superintendent of sewer here in Rockland?
Well, I mean, what I do now is essentially, I think, very similar to what I would be doing in Rockland. It would just be a step up on the ladder. And I think we probably have a lot more capital improvement projects going on right now, which is good that, my boss has an assistant superintendent, essentially. Just because we have so many capital improvements projects going on, $10 million last year, just massive amount of projects going on. So it's been I've been fortunate enough to have that much activity that I get to learn how to be the superintendent from the superintendent. And, I'm aware that, I believe, so Rockland doesn't have an assistant superintendent per se. So, I mean, it would just be really a rung up on the ladder for me, but, somebody who's might be coming from a private sector role might not have that experience. And, for me, it'd be essentially just hitting the ground running. I mean, everything that I expect I'd be doing here, I'm already doing.
So
So-
I understood is that there is a sewer superintendent in Hull and an assistant.
Yep.
Are you familiar with the IPP NIPD's process permit?
Yep.
Could you prepare a NIPD's permit?
I've never done that before, but I've done CMOM. You know, I put together CMOMs, and you know, that's NIPD's permit. I mean, we hire Woodard and Curran as our contract operator, and they manage the NIPD's permit. Never really had to get into that, but it certainly doesn't seem very complicated.
How would you or how are you now assuring compliance with the NIPD's permit as far as businesses, restaurants, commercial, industrial?
Well, I mean, you know, every NIPD's permit has loadings and flows and loadings capacity limitations. I'm aware that, you know, one of Rockland's main issues is capacity. And, you know, I do know that, you know, there are really only two things you can do there is either invest in massive, you know, capital upgrades, improvements at the plant, increase your permit capacity, or you can reduce I&I. You know, frankly, I think there are a lot of things you can do to reduce I&I that'll gain you that capacity, which, you know, might mean you don't have to increase capacity on your NIPD's permit. You know, right now we have a pretty ambitious SSES program, and, you know, we do like CCTV, smoke testing.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that again.
CCTV, smoke testing, you know, manhole inspections, and we've managed to reduce our I&I considerably. And one thing I think that's been a great success in the last year is using artificial intelligence platform to actually monitor the flow meters we have 7 different pump stations, and this artificial intelligence platform, you know, it essentially reads the pumping data and the flow meters at each pump station.
What are you using for software then?
It's called Aquasight Apollo, and we got it 75% funded through a Mass CEC grant. And what this program actually does is it reads the rainfall, precipitation, and groundwater, and it also reads the tides in Hull, because that's you know, a big issue for our infiltration. So it actually reads that data, and it figures out from looking at these trends how much of that is inflow, how much of it is infiltration. And that, I think, has been extremely successful, and actually has been more beneficial to us than even the SSES, which actually costed an arm and a leg compared to the Mass CEC grant.
What I was leading with that, with the NIPD's permit, you, not necessarily in Hull, do you issue permits with individual testing requirements, or do you just rely on the end result of your flow?
We just the end result of our flow.
Now, you jumped ahead of me because I wanted to get into the I&I issue. And I think you've touched base on your experience and involvement with it. Do you think you're capable or qualified enough to write an SSES study to go out to a subcontractor to perform the work?
Oh yeah, of course.
You are.
I mean, just a simple RFP. I mean, that's the easy part.
That's the easy part, but could
So-
you write the scope of work saying, here's what I want done when you go out to the street in this section, yada?
I've already, yeah, I mean, essentially I would copy and paste it from exactly what I did in Hull. So it's, I mean, it's been incredibly, I mean, the SSES is pretty capital intensive compared to, I mean, this AI program that I mentioned, which I think what that actually does is allow you to focus your SSE budget on these specific sewer sheds. So you're not just, you know, CCTVing every pipe all over town that might not even need it. So you might identify, okay, pump station 3, 4, and 5, we're seeing high inflow and infiltration there. Let's hit those with CCTV, you know, let's do flow metering, let's do smoke testing, see if we have any catch basins connected to the sewer. And we've been able to identify a ton of infiltration sources doing that stuff.
All right, well, identify is great. Okay, as a superintendent, how would you prove to me, the taxpayer, the effectiveness of your program? What would you use for a measurement tool to show me in black and white?
Well, I think you can actually, you can calculate a dollar per megagallon of savings based
You
on
can,
what
but
you're
how
pumping.
do you prove that you removed that?
So actually that Apollo software can do that. You'll see that on the chart, and that's why I think that's such an amazing program, and I tell everybody about that who will listen to me. Seems pretty complicated, but actually, I thought that's been an incredible platform that I think a lot of people are going to be getting on board with. I'm actually making a presentation to Mass CEC in early February with a bunch of other folks from National Grid, and because the main goal of this is obviously to conserve energy, and that's why Mass CEC, the Clean Energy Center, obviously that's why they have this grant program, right? But you can also, it's pretty easy to budget, like cured in place pipe. If you have an 8-inch sewer, per linear foot how much it's going to cost to line that pipe, or maybe a slip line it.
I'm familiar with the cost. I'm just saying, maybe I'm getting it out over my skis, but how would you prove that you actually remove that gallon?
You can easily show that on the software and the flows. I mean, if you get a bond to line a certain linear footage of pipe, and it costs a couple of $1 million, and you see that, okay, we've in the flows, dollar per megagallon, we've reduced the I&I this much, and maybe that's maybe per megagallon that ends up being $200,000 worth of savings. Well, that's a 10-year payback, so I mean it's pretty easy to justify that.
Okay, Stacey.
So in Rockland, the sewer superintendent, the department's relatively small. It's the sewer superintendent and the admin, and then there's a plant that Suez works, and they report directly to the superintendent. So that leaves a little bit of the dirty work for the superintendent. Are you comfortable, I know this was mentioned in the job description as well, but are you comfortable with the grease trap inspections? There's some late night calls if accidents happen and utility poles go down to mark out dig safe, or the general dig safe, and then the late night or daily sewer blockages. Is that something you do now, or is it?
There's a reason I didn't wear a suit to this job interview.
Okay.
I got boots on the ground, 24/7 I'm on call.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's just the nature of the job. I've worked 32-hour shifts in a row with no sleep. If there's an emergency, you got to do what you got to do. And, the role I have is, and the whole setup we have here in Hull is very similar to what you have here in Rockland. We have a 3 MGD plant. We hire Woodard & Curran as our contract operator. I know you have Suez, and they're a good provider too. And it's essentially it's very similar to the role I have right now, and I've never had a problem being on call, going out in the middle of the night. There was a backup we had on New Year's Eve. I was out there, 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve helping a resident, figure out what's going on, roots in his sewer lateral. It is what it is. Comes
Right.
with the territory.
Okay. And what's your general knowledge of disconnecting from septic to town sewer?
Yeah, I mean, abandoning a septic tank is pretty simple. I mean, there's pretty simple, straightforward procedures, and Hull is pretty built out, so we don't actually have many septic tanks there. We have maybe a handful in the whole town. I've inspected one abandonment of a septic tank. They just they broke the bottom of it and filled it with crushed stone and covered it up and connected to the sewer. You know, there's really not much more to it unless, you know, I'm sure there is at some level, but
All right.
not too complicated, nothing I can't handle.
Okay. And in your current job, are you familiar with the liens, how they work, and waivers on sewer? Do you?
Yeah, so we have an abatement program. You know, if a resident has metered non-return flows, we have a policy that, you know, if it doesn't go down the drain and come down to the plant, then, you know, we didn't pay to treat it. So we have an abatement program for folks, and I regularly do abatement inspections. You know, we require documentation such as repair bills, photos, all that sort of stuff.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yep.
Chuck?
How are you guys handling sludge removal down there?
We have gravity thickeners that we use in the winter, and we have an elevated sludge storage tank that we use in the summer due to some issues from the gravity thickener. But we get it to about, you know, we get it down to about 8% moisture, and or you know, 8% moisture content. But we actually have to water it down a little bit just to get it to flow into the truck, which is not ideal. Ultimately, you know, we did some math, and I think we came up with something like 51 truckloads of sludge we could actually reduce, which would actually end up being, I think, like $8,000 per year if we could somehow go to like a centrifuge system or, you know, some sort of sludge cake system. But ultimately, so Woodard & Curran, as the contract operator, they take on sludge disposal at risk, so that's part of their contract. So for us to actually upgrade any of our sludge equipment, we don't actually see the return on that. That would be Woodard & Curran's savings, essentially.
Do you have any experience with anaerobic digestion?
I do, yeah. Actually, when I was a consulting engineer, I did a study on utilization of biogas from anaerobic digestion. I looked at a few options, such as you know, combined heat and power, you know, electricity generation, and even nitrate fertilizer production using biogas.
Did you look at the capital cost, the return on investment?
I did, yeah.
To bring it to that level of cleanliness to be used?
I did, and it's very difficult to make that feasible. You need a lot of flow, a lot of BOD to make that feasible, because, you know, an anaerobic digester might be $8 million, say, and you know, the current prices of natural gas don't justify that. And beyond that, you actually have to remove things like there's some compound that has aluminum in it that they frequently have in biogas. And so to actually get the scrubbing equipment that removes that aluminum from the biogas is like extremely expensive.
What's your overall feeling on digesters in the sludge process?
I think if you're MWRA and you're at Deer Island, it probably makes sense.
Not WMWRA, you're a municipality.
It wouldn't make sense at all. We even have an incinerator. We don't even use the incinerator because it's just, you know, it costs more money to operate things like this than you really get for it unless you're really at scale. At least that's what I've found.
Are you familiar with Rockland's operation?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with Rockland's operation?
Just that you're around the same size, what, 2.5
we have 4
MGD?
anaerobic digesters.
You have 4 anaerobic digesters? Okay. So yeah, I mean, so what's your goal to, is it just to, just as sludge processing? I mean, you're not harvesting biogas?
No, we're not, just processing sludge.
Okay.
That'd
Well,
be
if you
your
already
job
have,
to tell us if it's worthwhile.
you already have digesters, I mean, I still actually have the spreadsheet that, made all the calculations based on wastewater flow, BOD content, and then, it actually calculates like how much natural gas you can capture from that and what the value of that is. And, when I actually did that study, and it was at a hog processing plant in Illinois, and they actually have a very high strength wastewater, which is, BOD that's 12 times regular municipal sewage, and it wouldn't even work then. So I guess I would, I'd really be careful, running the numbers on that to make sure it works before, you make capital improvements based on, capturing the value of a commodity that's already pretty cheap, frankly.
We're going to kind of shift gears from some of the technical into the managerial piece of the job, and then Chuck will add some additional technical questions towards the end. But what experience do you have now managing staff, and how many staff have you managed in the past? So what's the largest number that you've managed in the past, or
So
currently?
the largest number I'm managing right now, I would say, so we have a plant manager, assistant plant manager, and we have usually 2 to 3 operators on staff at a time. A total of, probably 6 to 8 folks. And then, at the sewer department, it's just, it's my boss, the director, me, our bookkeeper, and our admin.
Okay.
And so I guess my management strategy, I guess I don't want to make it sound like I'm a micromanager by any means, but I do think that, a lot of folks need to be, followed up with a lot. At least in the municipal world, I've learned that you can't always trust, people to just do what they need to do. You have to follow up with people all the time. And I don't, I like to, my strategy is really to build relationships with people and let them be the best they can be. Although I do like to run a pretty tight ship, I think. Sometimes I find if you're not keeping on somebody, sometimes, things don't, if you don't keep things in control, then, sometimes it goes off the rails and especially with consultants too, because it's not only staff that I manage, but there's also consultants and contractors that I manage. And, really keeping tight control of all these different projects and systems is really essential for somebody in my position, just so you don't get people spinning their wheels or wasting budget where, spending budget inefficiently. But, certainly I don't agree with, some folks who will, like yell at somebody when they do something wrong. I mean, obviously, you have to correct behavior that needs to be corrected and all that, but ultimately, if it's someone like a consultant or a contractor, you got to make it clear that, hey, you're going to do it our way or it's the highway. If you're spending the town's money, we don't have money for inefficient use of our budget, and you gotta really follow up with people, and that's really what I do all day, And the guys at the plant, I have great rapport with everybody. We have I'm very fortunate. We have great staff. But again, you really got to follow up with folks and make sure they have goals for the day and they have an agenda, and that they're followed up with, and make sure that people are meeting those goals.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
You know, as a sewer superintendent, you pulled in a million directions at once. What techniques do you use to prioritize your day and your week?
Mostly, you know, I do a lot of my organization on Outlook and Excel. I usually keep a calendar of the different, I keep a calendar on Excel with the different projects that I'm working on, and, you know, ball in court, whose action item this is, you know, what's going on. Because, and what I've also found is that it's actually better to organize your day the night before. And that's what I frequently do, is the night before I'll organize my day, fill up my schedule, and then, you know, because in the morning, you know, you might be pulled in this different direction, and then your schedule is all shot at that point. You know, I mean, 1 hour long diversion, and you know, your schedule is completely shot for the day. So really, I try to you know, set meetings with people and set different time frames, and use Outlook a lot. You know, send meeting invites and have people send me meeting invites when they want to talk, and you know, I really try to keep to an organized schedule in that sense.
How do you operate under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I just keep organized, and you know, no need to get emotional about anything, but you know, operating under pressure, you know, you just keep organized, and you keep in communication with people, and you make sure that you're properly staffed. And if you're not properly staffed, you don't have enough resources to do what needs to be done, then you got to bring that to the higher ups. And you know, that's it.
What's your involvement or experience in developing the annual budget, operating budget for your department, as well as town meeting warrant preparation?
So, you know, we have a bookkeeper, as I mentioned, who takes care of a lot of that stuff. But what I do is, you know, I'll take our, you know, projects out of our facility plan report and the different budgets there, and, you know, come up with, you know, how many different projects we would have to put on the warrant, you know, or sent to town meeting to get funded. But you know, fortunately we have a pretty good bookkeeper who you know, takes care of most of the budgeting and funding.
Well, when you prepare your
aspects.
budget, what's your history? What's your track record for hitting your line item?
Well, you know, sometimes, well, you know, a lot of times the projects, you know, we've been adding a pretty decent sized contingency, just because, you know, projects tend to take a mind of their own, and you know, you do have to allow enough contingency, especially with, you know, inflation, the way things have been. I mean, taking, you know, unit prices from a contractor 2 years ago, and you know, escalating it by 2% doesn't quite hit your target these days, we're finding. So we usually, you know, conceptual level will carry like a 30% contingency, maybe even 35%. You know, once you get it down to you know, 90% design, you're talking maybe 20%, you know, then to get it ready for bid, you know, you really should keep at least you know, 5 to 10% contingency on those types of items.
You usually hit your maintenance and repair budget on the money?
We do. Actually, the maintenance and repair budget, you know, the guys at Woodard and Curran, we, you know, we'll keep track of the maintenance count, and, you know, make sure we're not going over. And actually, the 2 years that I've been with Hull, we've come in under budget, and we've had money at the end of the year, you know. So then, you know, we have to start thinking like, oh, well, you know, do we need to inspect or clean, you know, some of these sewer sheds? And, you know, we find, you know, there's always some place you can find to spend some of that budget. But, you know, it's certainly better to have excess budget approaching the end of the fiscal year than there is to, you know, be in the hole. And we've been fortunate that way for the last couple of years.
You're familiar with the uniform procurement law on the state regs?
Yeah, Yeah, Chapter
Public
39.
construction, right. Good
Yeah,
laws.
Chapter 39, and I'm also, or Chapter 30, I guess, and then Chapter 149. Yeah, I'm well-versed in Chapter 30 or Chapter 149, front-end specifications, Division 0, Division 1, how that all, how they differ, and I also know I'm pretty well-versed in, like, when you would use Chapter 30 versus Chapter 149, and what the different bid requirements are for each of those. Do you need sub-bids for different trades and stuff? And, well aware of the dollar limits, like under 10,000, you can mostly do things based on best business practices. Over, I think it's 50 now, you have to go out to bid. And, over 125 with the Chapter 149 project, you might have to have sub-bids. So, I've studied this stuff extensively. And one thing I've also like to highlight is, so with the town of Hull, I actually got approval from our town council to do electronic bidding. So now that we have COVID, we don't have to we're actually not doing bid openings anymore. So I'm the person in Hull who operates this system called BidNet. And BidNet is essentially an electronic document hosting site. And it allows, once you post a project, advertise it in the central register and all that stuff, you can put all those documents up on BidNet. Contractors can get on there, become a registered plan holder, download all the documents, but then they can also upload their bids now. So they can scan all their bids, upload it, and I know exactly what the pitfalls are there, because I've learned a few things the hard way. I mean, with like bid bonds and stuff like that. I mean, there's a certain process you have to follow for electronic bidding that I think a lot of people might not be privy to. But really, I'm the go-to guy now in Hull for even other departments. They'll come to me and be like, "Hey, can you help me electronically bid this project or this proposal?" And
How are you with grant writing?
Oh, grant writing? So actually, I'm pretty good, actually. We actually have, so in addition to the CEC grant that we have, we were also recently awarded a FEMA grant to relocate some electrical equipment from our basement up to the second floor. And that's about a $500,000 grant. And
Do you
also,
do it alone, or do you have a team helping you out prepare the grant?
well, FEMA's a big one because, that grant, it actually cost us like, $20,000 to put together that grant application. FEMA's, that's kind of a bigger deal. But I've also been awarded 2 CZM grants.
You lost me, excuse me a minute, you lost me. You said it cost you $20,000 to prepare the grant?
Well, we had Woodard and Curran prepare the grant application.
Have you prepared a grant application?
So I did for CZM. So CZM and Mass CEC. Because FEMA's kind of a different animal, with federal grant programs. So our grant application for that FEMA grant application was like 100 pages long. And it's pretty labor intensive to put together a FEMA grant. But CZM, the Office of Coastal Zone Management, they've actually awarded us 3 grants since I've been in Hull. And the first one was to raise our electrical transformer up to a pole-mounted platform. And the second 2 grants were actually feasibility study and conceptual design for a berm around the facility to protect us from coastal storm floods. And right now on that project, we're in the second phase of that design, so we're at about 75% design now. But that grant, when we were awarded that grant, that was actually the biggest grant. That was the biggest CZM award of that year. So we were pretty proud of that. And I've maintained a great relationship with CZM, and I don't know how much good that's going to do me in Rockland. I mean, not being a coastal community,
Yeah.
I don't think you're probably on CZM's radar,
Global warming
unfortunately.
says we're gonna be coastal, so.
Yeah, maybe you're right, so,
Stacy,
yeah.
Yeah. So customer service is really important to the town of Rockland, as I'm sure it is to most communities.
Yep.
Who do you think your customers are as the sewer superintendent?
So, I mean, obviously the residents, the ratepayers, they're our customers. And, you know, that's pretty much everybody in Hull. So exactly, those are our customers right there. And, you know, we also accept some flow from Hingham and Cohasset. But, so yeah, they're our customers too, and we have intermunicipal agreements with them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So speaking on customers, I'm sure you know, you're going out helping them all the time, and I'm sure most times they're very happy with the end result. Maybe not so happy as it's happening, but hopefully happy at the end once everything's cleaned up and cleared out. But I'm sure at times you might run into somebody that is irate and they're, you know, not happy with what's going on and whatever that situation may be.
Well, that's not uncommon. I
How do
think-
you
I'm
handle
sure
that
you know
situation?
that's never uncommon.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure if it works this way in Rockland, but in Hull, we actually, our ownership takes over at the right-of-way, at the property line. So, you know, there's a section of a customer's lateral, their service, where, you know, it's town-owned up until the property line, and then it's, you know, then it's customer-owned. And, you know, if there's a backup in the sewer, you know, it's, sometimes it can get into a finger-pointing exercise, and as I'm sure you can expect, and I'm sure you've probably dealt with this in Rockland too, unless, of course, your ownership ends at the Y connection. I'm not sure.
No, you're, it's the same in Rockland. Is
yeah.
that- Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's a blockage, if there's a broken pipe, you know, within a foot of the property line, whose fault is it? And, you know, that's never an easy situation to deal with. You know, savvy homeowners, they know that if it's in the town right away, that we're going to have to pay for it. And, you know, as a representative of the sewer department, I can't just accept responsibility without, you know, somebody verifying, you know, first with the drain cleaner. They have to CCTV that, and the drain cleaner has to locate it on the surface that says, okay, this is where there's a broken pipe or some roots in the service, or, you know, and I mean, a lot of the drain cleaners in town, they'll even tell the customer, hey, you know, if it's in the street, the town has to pay for it, and they kind of, you know, they've kind of figured out the game, right? So fortunately, we have a pretty good policy that we strictly follow, because, you know, if you do something for, you know, if you give somebody a break, you know, in this neighborhood, and, you know, it gets out to their friends that, you know, oh, the sewer department didn't make me prove that it was in the street. They just dug it up and fixed it for me. Well, you know, then you set a dangerous precedent, I think. And, you know, that's really my role, is managing those precedents and make sure we don't deviate from our policy. You know, our policy is that if you have a backup, you know, your first step is you have to hire a drain cleaner who has to CCTV it and locate the blockage. I mean, unless, of course, there's a clean out at the property line, which is, so nowadays when we have a new connection permit, we have our sewer installers, you know, one of our policies is that they have to put a double clean out at the property line. So you can inspect both ways, or you can clean out the line. But also another thing is you can just pop the clean out cap and you can tell whose side the blockage is on. You know, so The, the important thing is just to have a policy and stick to it and don't set any precedents that you can't continue in the future. And, that's really how I deal with those things.
Great. Describe your ideal boss.
Well, I think, someone who, for the most part, gives me autonomy, autonomy to make my own decisions, and trusts me to come to them when I need help. As I mentioned, I run a tight ship, and I expect my boss to run a tight ship as well. But obviously you can't just micromanage people into the ground. So really, I like to have a certain amount of autonomy and decision-making ability. Up to a certain point that the commission's comfortable with, and as long as we know what those expectations are, I think that's the best way to work.
Great. If you are working closely with your boss and you might not see eye to eye on something, and you feel pretty strongly about a decision or the way you should go about fixing something, or whether it be on a project or whether it be something specific going on at that point in time, how do you communicate, or how do you handle that if you're differing of opinions?
Well, I mean, that happens all the time. Right? I mean, you and your boss are never going to see eye to eye all the time. And, I'll do my best to, state my case, and my boss respects my opinion. But ultimately, he's the boss, he's the director. And, I know my place, and if I know my place in the food chain, so, if he's the boss, it's his call, ultimately. All I can do is try to make my case, but, if I'm not the boss, everyone's got a boss, right? So everybody answers to somebody, and, there's a chain of command, and I would never break that chain of command and go to, the town manager to, circumvent my boss or anything. Ultimately, you try to bring somebody to your side of the table to see what you see. But if they don't see it that way, then you got to accept that.
Great. Thank you. Chuck?
Oh, okay. Have you ever had to enter into conflict negotiation with Mass DEP or EPA?
No, haven't had to deal with that, fortunately.
So you've never worked under a consent order or an admin order?
Oh, well, actually we did. So we did get a consent order before my time in Hull, so that's why we have to do a CMOM annual report every year. So yeah, we've actually, we're on pretty good terms at this point. I think there were certain terms that had to be met, I think, last year of the CMOM, and we met all those benchmarks, but, still every year we have to file a CMOM report in March.
So you've never had to take part in formulating corrective actions and follow up as far as under those orders?
Not specifically, yeah. That when that consent order happened, that was a few years back. We had a big flood out at the plant, and that's where that came from. And the director at that point is no longer with the town. But yeah, I'm aware that happened, but I've never had to deal with that personally.
All right, Rockland.
thank goodness.
Like a lot of other municipalities, is going to be under some significant budget constraints due to COVID and shortfalls. So one of the keys to this position is we're looking for a person who's really standalone as far as the technical writing. In general, do you feel you're prepared to prepare any of the following documents without the assistance of outside services? Technical scopes of work, RFPs, proposals?
Not a problem whatsoever. I do that right now.
Okay, could you prepare a comprehensive wastewater management plan?
I would probably, the way I would approach that, so I've never prepared a CWMP myself, but it's pretty easy to find another town's example online and just follow that example. Really, that's the business of engineering, to be quite honest with you. Nobody reinvents the wheel. If there's something you need to do and you've never done it before, you just find someone else's example, you follow that example. It's pretty simple to find a CWMP online. It's not, the thing is with, once you really figure out the technical side of engineering, everything else is really just following procedure and following other precedents. So that's the way I would approach that. I would find an example, follow it.
You'd approach a best management practice plan in the same manner.
What's that?
You'd approach a best management practice plan in the same manner.
Yeah. But really, that's where I think I could, frankly, I think I could provide tremendous benefit there, because as a consulting engineer, you might have to hire somebody to do an inclusion study or a capacity study for a new development. And, you could easily spend, several $1,000s having somebody look at capacities of pipes and slopes and, start doing Manning's equation and stuff like that. I've done all that stuff. I've been a design engineer. I can size pumps. I can size pipes. I can size aeration tanks. I've done all that as an engineer. And, that's... I've done all that stuff, and even putting together like on-call contracts for dig and replace services for contractors and stuff like that. I've done all. There are a great many things that a lot of towns spend budget, having a consulting engineer do, that I end up doing in-house. So and actually that electronic bidding that I mentioned earlier, I've actually saved the town substantial amount of money. Just by taking that on myself. And really, to hire a consulting engineer to put a project out to bid and analyze bids and do a bid opening, I mean, that's like thousands of dollars that doesn't need to be spent. And, there are many, many examples of instances where I think I could easily save the town oodles of money just by doing things myself. Because, not only have I already done these things, but I actually enjoy these things. I mean, that's why I went to engineering school. That's why I do what I do. So I'd be, happy to do stuff like that.
Rockland's in the middle of having a comprehensive facility study done, and it's indicating we're in the need of a very significant plant upgrade. Have you ever been, obviously, you taken part in one in Hull.
Yep.
Walk us through your involvement in that process and your responsibilities. Briefly.
So we worked with Woodard and Curran to put together a facilities and resiliency plan. So what they did was they looked at all the unit processes of the plant, the general flow of the plant, and try to find some efficiencies and needed upgrades, and try to break out these little miniature projects. And really, it's probably $50 million over the next 5 or 6 years. And so where I take, so I would review this facility plan, and I vet these recommendations, and then I work with our bookkeeper to find out what we can afford this year, how we can afford this the next year, and how does that affect our rate structure. And we've already had a rate increase structure approved at town meeting. So there's limitations that we have to stay within. and Hull has pretty high rates, probably higher than Rockland. I remember we did a rate study with, against a lot of other towns, and Hull actually has a pretty high rate, even relative to like MWRA and other coastal communities. So, just like every other town, we're working within budget limitations, but in Hull, it's even tighter.
Well, have you been, as an individual, have you ever had full responsibility for an upgrade of that nature?
Well, $50 million of upgrades to manage that yourself. So if it's a treatment facility, you probably, by law, you probably have to hire an OPM, an owner's project manager, but, they can only do so much. But, there's a team of people that manage that. And I've always been on the team, but never, been at the top.
All right, well,
Yep.
we've certainly learned a lot today about your qualifications. Do you want to maybe just sum up how you feel the town of Rockland fits into your overall goals, how this position for the town sort of fits into your plan?
Sure. So this is really very similar to what I do right now. It's for me, it's just a step up the ladder, and it's a step that I'm ready to take.
Great. Do you have any questions for us?
Let's see. So I guess first of all, what's your schedule for hiring and your timeline?
We're actually looking to, the commissioners have a meeting next week, so for the 4 that have interviewed tonight, they will do their homework and hopefully be prepared for next meeting to have final 2 candidates, in which then hopefully within that next week or 2 tops, be able to have final interviews and make a decision.
Okay.
So, within hopefully the next 3 weeks or so.
Okay. And is there a term for the appointment? Or is it, is it a 2-year term or anything, or?
I believe it'd be a contract 3-year term.
The contracts are usually 3-year term. I'm not sure, honestly, if the charter says anything different, but usually they're 3. Would you happen to know, Dave, or?
What's that?
Walter? Would you happen to know that, or no?
Well, no, because remember the town went without the contracts as of this year, but where the sewers works off of the town receipts, that could be it could be handled a little differently.
Differently,
As far as
right.
contractual.
The previous contracts have been for 3-year increments.
Okay. And just curious, a little bit about your system here. So the treatment plant, can I assume it was built in the late 70s, early 80s?
The plant was built originally in 1962.
Yeah.
Had one upgrade in, I think, 1984, which was the addition of a lab, some HVAC work. It is in need of a dire upgrade, significant. It's a
Okay.
2.5 million gallon system, you saw in the job description. We are at capacity.
And how about your collection system? Is it, likewise, your collection system, is it about the, 50 years old?
Yes,
Or
there has been no upgrade to the system.
so is it a lot of clay pipe or PVC? Would you say?
Like,
That's mixed. So there has been some upgrades to some of in the 80s when plastic came a little bit more relevant. There were some upgrades that they did to coincide with some of the road work, and that's still persistent to this day now. So you have mixed use, obviously, where development from the 80s up is probably all plastic, and then precedent to that is, you're looking at clay pipes from there. So, and there's been some conversions. We're like any other town right now. The infrastructure, or the underground infrastructure, isn't in great shape unless you're from the 80s up. So, or any new mass development. so.
So have you inspected a lot of the clay pipes? And
Yeah,
have you-
so there's been a lot of, I mean, you go back maybe 12, 13 years ago, they were currently back then running 3.5 MGDs on an average, and, you know, with the I&I work, you know, the CCTV, and then pipelining, so they did a lot of that development with AECom, so they brought that to a 2.5 MGD now, so there's still a lot of I&I work there, and there's a budget for the I&I work in town, so there's a lot, you know, for a new incoming superintendent to take over to get some of that capacity issues back out in the infrastructure, so,
Okay, sounds like you've already reduced it considerably, though.
yeah.
That's good.
The,
Okay.
like Dave was saying, it's a 2.5, now we have, what, 50,000 approved additional that's not in that 2.5, projected 200,000 over the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, it's hard to say, because you only have one, there's no approved developments yet, so,
The ones we have that we voted on approval, so they have.
yeah, if you're looking at some industrial, so, but, I mean, it's a good job to be popping into, where I think there's a lot in front of you as far as the plant upgrades. You know, that's in the works, like Chuck touched base on, and then there is money for I&I, and we're pretty proactive on the I&I in town right now, and you sound like you understand how it works, so.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you know you can get that capacity back out in the field in some length, so.
But again, we're dealing with the budget constraints due to COVID that is every other town is.
Sure, sure. And what percentage of the town would you say is built out?
What is it?
What percentage of the town would you say is built out?
I mean, roughly, you're looking at built out for a sewer or built out on total development?
Oh, yeah, I guess you probably have a lot of large sections of the town that are still on septic, too.
Yeah, well, yeah,
It's
you're,
only about 8,000.
yeah, there's,
It's not even that.
not even, yeah, so septic-wise?
Over 500 maybe?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of switch outs on that now, so it's, and then any, obviously, new transfer to ownerships it's mandatory now to switch over, you know, Title V. So, but you're probably at about 80 to 85% build out, you know, in the town right now, but they're pretty adamant about keeping open space too on large developments. If, you know, we've got a development in the works right now. If that happens to go through, then we're at our quota for 40B, so that would obviously put a little bit of a hamper on anything new coming in as far as development. You know, we're still under the moratorium as the commissioners pointed out, but they're also, you know, part of that, it was the 11-1 ratio. They worked out with DEP and EPA on that, so. So there's a lot in front, so,
Yeah,
a lot of good.
yeah, so there's a lot of work to be done. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the most value, I think, you know, hopefully that you see in me and that differentiates me is that, you know, a lot of the engineering assignment tasks that you would normally have to go to a consultant for, I can handle a good amount of stuff. I mean, only being limited really by my time. I mean, I've been in this business long enough, and it's not that complicated. And you know, being a professional engineer, you know, I've seen a lot of problems, and you know, been through a lot of iterations on a lot of different problems, and you know, you figure out things the hard way sometimes. But you know, the experience I've had, I think, would be very valuable for this position, so, yeah.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, I think we're good, if you're good.
Yep.
It was a pleasure meeting you finally, and
Yeah.
hopefully, like I said, we'll be in touch soon, and the commissioners will be meeting next week, so we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Yeah, you know, it's an exciting opportunity, you know, I mean, like I've said, it's essentially the exact job that I have right now, only it's a rung up on the ladder, and, you know, I'd be happy to take a step up.
Great.
Really, just excited about the opportunity.
Stace,
Great.
Yeah.
time-wise on it?
Yes, I think we've got to go. All right, yes.
Make a motion to close the meeting.
You're
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Thanks.